Chapter 863. Noah meets Azazel. Noah gawked between his father and King Porter. When King Porter noticed Noah's gaze on him, his heart skipped a beat. King Bredia and Bai Ning frowned as Noah made his way to King Porter. Every fiber in Noah's body told him to find another way to cure his father. If he had enough time, he might come up with a way to lift the curse. But without the time and his mentor, who entered into a slumber, Noah couldn't come up with a way to save his father. Ever since he was a little kid, Ethan gave everything to Noah. His father was more of a best friend to him than a father. Noah couldn't even imagine a world without his father. Moreover, he knew his mother would break into pieces if he let Ethan die. If making a deal with the Dark Lord was the only way to save his father, Noah was willing to do it. His father's life was worth more than his principles. "Your Majesty," Noah's voice broke as he looked King Porter in the eyes. "I know what you did to save Princess Chanel." King Porter trembled, hearing the words coming out of Noah's mouth. I don't know what you're talking about, Noah," King Porter stuttered. "It's not the time to cover up, Your Majesty." Noah slowly shook his head. "I wouldn't ask you if I had the time to go to the Dark Ocean and meet him myself. But we don't have much time. So please, summon him," Noah pleaded with King Porter. When King Porter asked for help with the curse on Princess Chanel, Noah felt how powerful the curse was and went to the treacherous ocean, one of the most dangerous places in the world, to help her without worrying about his life. Although Noah returned empty-handed, King Porter wholeheartedly felt grateful toward Noah. No one would have ventured into the treacherous ocean to help the princess. Rowena didn't know what had happened with Princess Chanel. The only thing she knew was that King Porter might have something to help her father. However, Rowena didn't like to see her little brother begging for a measly king. She was on the verge of freezing King Porter to the neck and forcing him to reveal whatever Noah wanted him to. "King Porter," King Bredia opened his mouth. "If you have something to help Ethan, please give what Noah wants." "You know Ethan would do it in a heartbeat," King Bredia said. He was oblivious to the fact that Noah wanted to summon the Dark Lord. Otherwise, King Bredia would have never spoken these words. He still had nightmares of the time Ghost ambushed the engagement gala and threatened to kill Catherine and the baby inside her. "If you want me to beg Dash." "No." When Noah tried to lower his head, King Porter grabbed his shoulder and shook his head. Once everyone said Princess Chanel couldn't be cured, King Porter felt weak and helpless despite his status as a king. Being a king didn't matter when he couldn't be a good father and save his daughter. At that time, King Porter would have given anything to have a tiny bit of hope to save Chanel, and Noah was the only man who gave him that hope. As long as he lived, Porter couldn't forget the sliver of hope Noah gave him. To be honest, King Porter didn't think he could forgive himself if he stood there and did nothing to help Noah. As a righteous king and a grateful man, he had to give the card the Dark Lord gave him. He just hoped the Dark Lord would accept the summon from the Supreme Guardian. "He gave me this if I want to contact him again," King Porter said after taking a long deep breath. Then, he took out the black card with a skull embossed in from his space ring. "Is that..." The moment King Bredia saw the skull, his body shivered. He took a few steps back and almost tripped down on his robes. Pure fear and shock overwhelmed Bredia's senses as he began to see images of piles of bodies on the engagement gala before his eyes. The Dark Lord, who was known as Ghost, then single-handedly slaughtered almost every royal guard and beat him to a pulp on his own throne. "I don't know how to summon him. Maybe you can figure it out." Ignoring King Bredia's tantrum, Porter handed over the card to Noah. Noah's hands shivered as he took the card from Porter's hand. Never in a million years, Noah thought, asking the Dark Lord for his help. But he didn't have a choice, as the Dark Lord may be the only person who could lift the curse and save his father. "Noah!" The entire hall trembled as Bai Ning's shout swept across the area. The old woman dashed at Noah in a blink of an eye and snatched the card from his hand. "How dare you think of summoning that evil creature?" Bai Ning's blood boiled, thinking Noah was trying to summon the Dark Lord in front of her and the Holy Maiden. Ethan's life meant nothing compared to striking a deal with the Dark Lord. The mere thought of Noah considering asking the Dark Lord's help made Bai Ning's anger explode like a raging volcano. She wanted to strike down Noah and King Porter for colluding with the Dark Lord where they were standing. But first, Bai Ning wanted to destroy the card left behind by the Dark Lord. No! Sabrina shouted as Bai Ning clenched her fist to crush the card to pieces. Just as Bai Ning was about to crush the black card, a wave of bone-chilling frost blasted Bai Ning onto the wall behind her. The old woman collided with the wall and coughed up blood. Before her body could hit the ground, a stream of ice shot out of Rowena's blades and froze the old woman up to her neck. Noah quickly raised his hand as the card on the ground flew back into his hand. Holy Maiden! Bai Ning could neither raise her voice nor a finger against Rowena. In a blink of an eye, Rowena disappeared from Ethan's side and appeared before Bai Ning. You cannot let this happen, Bai Ning stuttered. If you breathe a word about any of this, Rowena's voice was cold and sharp as a dagger that pierced into Bai Ning's heart. I will freeze your body to the core and toss you into the deepest pits of hell. Fear took over Bai Ning's mind and prevented her from opening her mouth. The murderous intent she saw in Rowena's eyes was not a joke. Bai Ning's immortal stage cultivation wouldn't save her from the Holy Maiden's wrath. At the end of the day, Diana was not the only one with an ancient god's blood. After Bai Ning heard Rowena's threat, she closed her mouth. Summon him, Diana said to Noah, who held the card in his hand. Noah, stop. King Breedia rushed to Noah's side. Don't do this, Noah. You are the Supreme Guardian. What would the world think if they knew you asked for the Dark Lord's help? What would your teacher say? Will he approve of this? King Breedia fired questions, one after another. The Dark Lord was the last person he wanted under the same roof as his daughter and grandson. What if the Dark Lord decided to kill them all? What if he wanted to take his grandson away? What if he hadn't forgotten what he did and decided to seek revenge? So many questions wreaked havoc inside Breedia's mind. I don't care about anything. If seeking his help will save Father's life, that's what I would do, Noah said, slowly shaking his head. When Breedia tried to stop Noah, Rowena just turned her cold gaze toward him as he felt a cold chill running down his spine. Breedia took a step back in utter fear and stood in the corner, watching Noah summon the Dark Lord helplessly. Holding the card in his hand, Noah took a deep breath. He looked around the black card to figure out the way to contact the Dark Lord until he felt a strange tingling in his hand. He felt like the card was asking for a sliver of arch-energy, and that's what exactly Noah did. He slowly injected the card with arch-energy. For a moment, the card remained dormant, and then it trembled. Black smoke slowly rose from the skull as the card floated above Noah's hand. Everyone turned their gazes at the card floating in midair. The black smoke permeating from the card slowly formed a mirror before them. As they were looking into the mirror, a man with wings sticking out of his back appeared. His eyes glowed like rubies. The man was dressed like a butler, with his hair neatly combed to the side and wearing black gloves. When he saw Noah, a strange smile formed on his handsome face instead of shock. Supreme Guardian Noah. What a pleasant surprise. It's my pleasure to meet you at last. The butler's voice sounded crisp and clear as he lowered his head. But his bow indicated amusement instead of respect. Even though Noah didn't see the man in person, he could feel the overwhelming power radiating from him. According to Noah's spies, the Dark Lord had a personal butler. They described him as the butler with demon wings. Judging by the look of the man before him, Noah realized he must be the butler they informed him about. I need to speak with Ghost, Noah bluntly said. I can see King Porter Forbes behind you. King Porter's mouth dried in fear as he saw the butler smiling at him. Rowena and Diana came to Noah's side and stood behind him. You must be the Holy Maiden and Lady Diana Winston. I am honored to meet you, my ladies. The butler bowed slightly as Rowena creased her brows. Call your master demon, Rowena coldly said. The demon smiled, slightly surprised to see Rowena identifies his race accurately. Besides, she didn't seem shocked to see a demon in person, unlike Bai Ning, who had sweat beads forming on her forehead. Forgive me for being blunt, my lady. But how do you expect the Dark Lord to answer your call when the clans you are in have sworn to kill him? The demon butler asked Rowena. I saved his life once. It's time he settles that debt, said Rowena. Chapter 864. Plan to destroy Noah's image. Azazel was surprised by Rowena's words and took a few moments to formulate a fitting response. He knew they must be in some blunder if they chose to contact the Dark Lord. Hence, Azazel wanted to gauge how desperate they were before informing the Dark Lord. And the Dark Lord will settle the debt in time. Unfortunately for you, Holy Maiden, he doesn't work for the Sky Hall. Rowena took a step forward and stood beside Noah. Her eyes glistened with cold, murderous intent. I give you 5 seconds to call Ghost, Rowena snarled as Azazel let out an amused smile. And what would happen when your countdown reaches 6? Asked Azazel. Nothing. But soon, you will see me in the dark ocean, bringing the entire might of Sky Hall to your doorstep. Your head will be the first one to roll down. Is threatening us the best way to ask for help, Holy Maiden? Another voice appeared as they saw Azazel turn around and bow. The next moment, Noah and the others saw Gaia, the Dark Queen, stand before them in her dark suit of armor. Azazel, we always settle our debt. Gaia looked over her shoulder and said to Azazel. Then, she turned her gaze back to Rowena and Noah. You must be in some pretty desperate situation to ask for our help. Let's just say your clans have nothing to do with us. Why would we help you? What's in it for us? Gaia rubbed her chin. You said it yourself, you always settle your debt. My sister saved Ghost's life, and it's time he returns the favor, said Noah. Forgive me for thinking this might be an elaborate trap to capture the Dark Lord, Noah. Your pretty wife tried that, and it didn't turn out well, did it? Now explain to me why I shouldn't think that way? Because Ethan is dying. Diana stepped forward and answered Gaia instead of Rowena or Noah. When Gaia heard Diana, her brows slightly arched up in surprise. She slowly waved her hand as the floating card turned a bit toward Ethan. He will be there. Gaia's words completely taken aback Noah and Rowena by surprise. They expected to negotiate or at least threaten her, but she glanced at Ethan for a moment and agreed to help them. Thank you, Diana said as tears trickled down her eyes. I hope for your sake you and your teacher don't play with your father's life. After Gaia spoke these words, her figure vanished into thin air. The card fell down to the ground as they all stared at the place where Gaia was for a few seconds without batting an eye. Asterisk, my lady, Gaia turned around to see Azazel. The demon butler was just as confused and surprised as Noah. Forgive me for questioning you, my lady. But why did you agree to help them? Asked Azazel. Did you see their faces? They are desperate. Gaia's face lit up. Imagine the world knowing that Noah, the Supreme Guardian, needed the Dark Lord's help. People who support Noah would go nuts when they realize he struck a deal with the Dark Lord to save his father. Plus, when Sky Hall hears the Holy Maiden allowed the Dark Lord into her own home, we can expect some very big backslashes from her elders. Gaia devilishly chuckled. Whoever tried to kill Ethan has done us a huge favor. Inform Nadia Hall about this. Tomorrow morning, I want to see the headline The Supreme Guardian struck a deal with the Dark Lord to save his family. He went for our weapons and I am going straight for his credibility. I want to see that bastard's face when he realizes we completely fucked up his loyal base. Gaia couldn't keep her excitement bottled. If Azazel wasn't there, she would have bounced up and down, celebrating Noah's desperate situation. Has he returned from his little trip? Gaia asked Azazel. Yes, my lady. He is currently meditating in the garden. I'll go meet him then, said Gaia. Eventually, Gaia reached the Sword Hilt mountaintop and saw Michael meditating with his eyes closed. Nightmare was peacefully sleeping behind him, cuddling Vidora. By the time Gaia reached Michael, the sky had rumbled in the distance as she sensed the upcoming heavy storm. Despite the weather, Michael remained calm and completely focused on keeping his mind empty. What surprised Gaia was the dark swords. They stood on each side like guards while radiating crimson-red lightning bolts. She could feel the electricity in the air around him. Human, Gaia called Michael in a husky voice as his eyelids moved slightly. It took Michael a few seconds to slowly open his eyes. You are not gonna believe what just happened, said Gaia. Michael saw her eyes glowing with excitement and became curious. Give me a second. Michael stood up as the dark slowly flew into his sheath. He then proceeded to brush off the dust from his black coat and adjusted his sleeves. I just talked to Noah Winston. As soon as Gaia said these words, Michael was taken aback by surprise. His brows arched up. For a moment, His mind couldn't apprehend her words. Without keeping Michael in the dark, Gaia told him everything. Michael didn't even bat an eye hearing the story. Michael walked to the mountain's edge and glanced at the stormy dark ocean before him. Ethan was one of the few people who helped us without an ulterior motive, Michael said, remembering all his conversations with Ethan. He couldn't help thinking of Diana either. For some reason, he felt a strange connection with Diana and Ethan. Besides, Rowena did save his life when the Blood Prince almost punched him to death. So he naturally felt indebted to Rowena, and he hated the feeling of being indebted to someone else. That was the reason why Michael always avoided taking loans from the system. Although Noah was his arch-nemesis, his conscience didn't allow him to ignore Noah's plea for help. Michael knew how hard it must have been for Noah to seek his help out of all people. Furthermore, Ethan and Diana always treated him well, like he was one of their own. Plus, this was a great opportunity to gain thousands of badass points as well as ruin Noah's image among the people. After taking a few long moments to gauge the plus and minuses of visiting Noah's home, Michael finally agreed to help him. Nightmare. Michael looked over his shoulder and called out his dragon. Nightmare opened his eyes and slowly rose up to his feet without waking up Fedora. Since Nightmare was in his true form, he cast a large shadow on the ground, which trembled as he walked toward Michael. "We are going to Penn Town, buddy," Michael said, rubbing Nightmare's warm chin. "I am coming with you," Gaia firmly said. "Keep your eyes open when we reach there." "I have a feeling this assassination attempt has something more to it," said Michael. As much as Michael loved causing trouble for Noah, he didn't wish his parents to die. Michael would never wish someone to be an orphan as he knew what that life would be like. Part of him blamed Noah for failing to protect his parents and loving family. Every time one of Noah's family got themselves into trouble, he had to save them. If anything, Noah should feel grateful toward him. Meanwhile, Noah's team of elites rushed to his home as soon as they heard what just happened during the baby shower. The word of the assassination attempt on Ethan's life spread through the kingdom like wildfire. "Supreme Guardian." Neela entered the hall with the others. "We are already sweeping the kingdom as we speak for the assassin. We will find him," said Neela. She clenched her fist, seeing all the blood on Noah's pure white robes and on the ground. Rowena completely ignored the guardians and sat beside Ethan, keeping the wound closed with the ice. Sabrina sat next to Rowena and held Ethan's hand as tight as she could. On the other hand, Diana remained without shedding a drop of tears. She firmly believed the Dark Lord could save Ethan's life. Diana's mind imagined new ways of killing the assassin and whoever sent him. After taking care of Ethan, tracking down the assassin would be her top priority. Even if the assassin ran to the edge of the world, she would find him and show him what would happen if someone dared to touch her family. "You guys secure the parameters and keep everyone away from Ghost." Neela and the others creased their brows as they couldn't believe what they had just heard. "Did you say Ghost, Supreme Guardian?" asked Neela. "He is the only one who could lift the curse put on my father," said Noah. After Neela and the others heard Noah, their minds went blank. As a result, complete silence swept across the hall until Neela opened her mouth. "You cannot do this, Supreme Guardian." "There must be another way," said Neela. "What if this is all his plan?" "How can you know he wasn't the one who sent the assassin?" asked Neela. To their surprise, it was Diana who answered Neela, not Noah. "He didn't," Diana simply said as everyone turned their gazes toward her. "My Lady Dash," Diana raised her hand, abruptly cutting Neela's words short. "If he wanted Ethan dead, he would be 6 feet down on the ground by now," Diana said without bothering to hide her killing intent. The murderous rage in Diana's eyes startled Rowena as she had never seen her mother like that. Granted, Ethan was just stabbed, and her mother was not in her usual self, but still, the murderous aura Rowena felt around Diana completely surprised her. In Rowena's eyes, Diana seemed like a new person. "Find the assassin and figure it out. If you find him first, he will be alive." Diana openly issued a threat, giving no shit about the Guardians. The one before them at that moment was not Diana but Harriet Hunt. Just a glimpse of her former self freaked the hell out everyone, including Noah and Rowena. I will face the consequences of my actions later. For now, this is my order. Go and secure the area and do not make any moves on the Dark Lord, Noah ordered his team. Chapter 865. The Dark Lord is in Noah's home under the starlight and silvery moon. The shadows of the trees danced upon the Winston Manor. The leaves flickered like candlelight, creating a new picture from moment to moment. Amid the perfume of the summer blooms, feeling the cool of the evening wash over the pentown as the waves kiss sun-warmed sand. The green-colored atmosphere was getting mixed with cloudy light. Little showers of rain were blowing down on the manor as the soldiers and the guardians patrolled the area vigilantly. They were all informed about Noah's decision to summon the Dark Lord. Hence, the soldiers looked pale and gawked at the sky, expecting the Dark Lord to arrive anytime. The sun slowly disappeared from the horizon, paving the way for the darkness to conquer the land. When the stars peeked through the night sky and the silvery moon bathed the land with its dazzling light, the nobles who left the manor returned. This time, they stayed in the air, keeping their distance from the Winston Manor. Many were still on their way to the Winston Manor, and Zanali was one of them. Since she was a guardian and lover of Noah, she was granted permission to descend down within the main gates. Guardian Captain, Alvaro, the Dark Lord's inside man, greeted Zanali with a bow. "Where is the Supreme Guardian?" asked Zanali as she rushed into the home. Inside, Alvaro didn't even finish his words as Zanali entered the hall, leaving him behind. Unlike the rest of his team, Alvaro chose not to stay inside. Ever since he started to work for the Dark Lord, he felt uneasy looking Noah in the eyes. To keep his nerves in check and remain calm, Alvaro patrolled the manor alone. His hands shivered, thinking about the Dark Lord and the Supreme Guardian under the same roof. Deep down, he couldn't wait to see them slaughter each other, and that way he would be a free man once again. Recently, he was ordered to learn where Noah keeps the inventor they rescued from the dwarves. Apparently, Noah didn't trust his elites enough to reveal the inventor's location. Except for Noah himself, no one in the guild knew about the location. Like it or not, Alvaro had to find the location and give this information to the vampire handler, or they would send the feed of Alvaro forcing himself on a woman to Noah directly. If that happened, it would not only destroy his career as a guardian but also get him thrown into the dungeon. So he had to choose between serving the Dark Lord or spending his life in a dark prison cell. "I have to work on Neela," Alvaro mumbled under his breath. Among all the elites, Noah trusted Neela the most. Thus, Alvar planned to gain Neela's trust and make her learn the inventor's location. He would be able to get the information from Neela once she has it. While Alvaro was formulating a plan to learn Hammond's location, Zanali reached Noah and tried to talk him out of his plan to call the Dark Lord for his aid. "Nothing you say will make me change my mind, Zanali. I have no choice." Noah and Zanali stood in one corner and conversed in a husky voice. "I know how much your father means to you, Dash. Do you? If you know, you won't try to talk me out of this. Listen to me, Zanali. I don't like this any more than you do. Every fiber in my body tells me not to call him, but I have no choice. I have to do this for my family. I cannot lose him," said Noah. Zanali clenched her fist. She knew Noah was right but couldn't let him ask for the Dark Lord's help, who brutally murdered her best friend, Peyton. "Look at her." Noah turned his head, looking at his mother. "She is not even crying. I don't think she will ever overcome father's death. If I lose him, I will lose her too. Without them, there is no Winston family," Noah's voice stuttered. Seeing him like this made Zanali forget all her hatred toward the Dark Lord for a moment and agree with Noah's decision. She knew Noah was right. Even the Sky Hall Elder failed to lift the curse. So if anyone could help Noah, it was the Dark Lord himself. However, Zanali was afraid of the consequences of seeking his aid. "Whatever happens, I will be at your side." Zanali took Noah's hands in her and gently squeezed them. "I just wish Lord Andreas was here," said Zanali as Noah nodded. "Me too. Lately, we have had too many arguments, and I didn't leave him to his slumber on good terms," Noah sighed. Then, his gaze swept across the hall until he locked his eyes on the cake. "I should have been more careful. How could I let this happen?" "Don't blame yourself, Noah. Don't do that now. As much as I hate that murdering son of a bitch, he might be the only person who could lift the curse and save your father. He did heal my sister's broken meridians and lifted Princess Chanel's curse, said Zanali. I know. I don't know what I would do if he couldn't. Noah's body trembled as he looked at Ethan's blood on his hand. The blood glistened like a mirror and showed him the images of his childhood with his father. Noah could hear Ethan's words in his mind loud and clear, as though he was behind him. Winning is great, but losing with grace and humility is just as important. I can teach you how to throw a punch, but never start a fight, and always know when to walk away. I'm so lucky that I get to be your dad. Noah's eyes watered as he heard his father's words that were like mantras to him. His entire life was shaped around Ethan's words and his teachings. Noah knew although his father might not be as strong as Andreas, he was always there for him, no matter what. Now that he was on the verge of losing Ethan forever, Noah missed him more than anything. He regretted the moments he spent roaming around instead of staying with his father. Suddenly, the sound of thunderclaps stopped Noah's train of thought and brought him back to reality. The windows in the manor shuddered, making a thudding noise. Zanali looked around the hall as the chandeliers and light orbs flickered. Soon, they noticed the area around the manor darkened. Zanali strolled outside the manor and joined a group of guardians staring at the sky. The stars and moon were nowhere to be found in the sky. Instead, dark clouds surrounded the sky as far as one could see. When the lightning flashed across the dark sky, Zanali saw a large shadow of a dragon above the clouds. He is here, Zanali muttered under her breath. Through the dark clouds, a dragon with crimson-red scales descended to the ground. The soldiers and the guardians tensed as they clenched their swords and spears tight. But no one dared to cast a spell or attack the dragon as they all moved away from the front yard, making space for the dragon to land. Finally, Zanali saw the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen standing atop the dragon. They stared at the guardians and the soldiers without a shred of fear in their eyes. In fact, they looked amused to see so many of them. The dragon bore its teeth, threatening everyone to burn them down if they even lifted a finger against the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen. Just the sheer size of the dragon and its fusion stage cultivation level was enough to make many soldiers shudder in fear. When Michael slid down Nightmare's wings and landed on the ground, Diana came running outside. As soon as she laid her eyes on his smiling face, all the worries and sadness drifted away from her heart. She wanted to welcome him with open arms, yet she had to control her motherly instincts for now. The nobles who witnessed the Dark Lord walking into the Supreme Guardian's home gasped in shock. Nadia Hall was in the crowd, watching and recording everything to put in the newspaper the next day. Under their shocked gazes, Michael made his way into the home and met Diana before the doorway. I wish we had met under different circumstances, Lady Diana. Diana stood before Michael like a statue. Everything will be all right, Michael said with a reassuring smile. Whenever he saw this woman, he felt a deep connection with her to the point he wanted to wipe those tears off her face. He couldn't see her shedding tears. Michael knew words weren't enough to make her feel good. Thus, he entered the hall with the system screaming in his head. The trip was worth the risk as he earned hundreds of thousands of badass points in a few seconds. As soon as he stepped into the hall, Noah was the first one he saw. But to Michael's surprise, Noah looked relieved to see him instead of furious or tense. Contrary to Noah's demeanor, Zanali and King Breedia trembled. One trembled in anger for killing her best friend, while the other trembled in pure fear. No one in the hall dared to make a sound in front of the Dark Lord. Brother Ghost, Sabrina broke through the silence with her words. She came running to him and jumped onto him for a hug. I should see Lord Ethan first, said Michael, ignoring everything and everyone else. While Michael was following Sabrina toward Ethan, Zanali, and Gaia entered into a staring contest. This was the first time they met each other in their real forms since Zanali threw Gaia in prison. The tension between them was certainly high. One could see the burning rage in Gaia's eyes. She took a couple of steps and met Zanali in the middle. Gaia, said Zanali. Zanali, said Gaia. Believe it or not, Father still regrets breaking your meridians. He even wants to see you again, said Zanali. Gaia let out a murderous chuckle. But is he tired of living? I am asking this because Gaia slowly leaned forward. I want to drag his ass off the throne and put an arrow through his heart, Gaia whispered into Zanali's ear. Chapter 866. Do you see the hypocrisy? Leaving Zanali in shock, Gaia returned to Michael's side. Zanali knew Gaia always hated her father, but she never thought Gaia actually wanted to kill her own father. The killing intent she saw in Gaia's eyes was real, very real. Ethan was laid to rest on a white sofa that turned completely red with blood. Michael dropped to one knee beside Rowena. The sound of lightning bolts crackling around the two swords on his back made Rowena's neck hair stand up. If not for Ethan's current state, everyone would have been stunned by the dark swords. Tiny crimson-red bolts of lightning crackled around the three dragon-coiled hilts that were sticking out of the sheath as Michael simply greeted Rowena with a nod. "Can you lift the curse?" Rowena asked Michael. The cold bowtie's eyes were mixed with grief, helplessness, and anger. But she was good at hiding her emotions. Even when her father was on the verge of dying, she remained stoic and calm. "I can." Michael's simple answer lifted an immense weight from everyone's hearts and rekindled the light of hope once again. He glanced around the hall to see everyone's reaction until his gaze fell on Bai Ning. She was frozen up to her neck. Judging by the thick layer of bone-chilling ice around her, Michael could tell the old woman did something foolish enough to make Rowena freeze her. "I never thought I'd see you again," Michael said, calmly looking at Bai Ning. Michael's words surprised Rowena as she never thought he knew Bai Ning. "How did you know her?" Rowena couldn't help asking Michael. Without answering Rowena, Michael flicked his wrist as everyone in the hall, except Diana, tensed. They thought the Dark Lord was about to unleash his wrath upon them. "Relax." Gaia waved it off as Michael took out a crystal sphere from his space ring. "What is that?" asked Noah, creasing his brows. "Recording crystal." After Michael answered Noah, he turned his head to the side and looked at Rowena. "You asked me how I know her. Well, this is how." Michael placed the sphere on the ground. "Do not listen to his poisonous words, holy maiden," Bai Ning growled. The old woman panicked because she knew what he was about to show the holy maiden. Pialfadelfinoda. Bright rays of light shot from the sphere and formed a glistening square that showed an image of a barren field. This barren field had nothing except headstones with names carved on them. Dark clouds watched over the barren field, casting an inky blackness to the graveyard. Hundreds or even thousands of headstones remained there, symbolizing the men and women who were laid to rest underneath. "This graveyard doesn't have brave soldiers or evil followers of mine. On the contrary, they were men, women, and children who just wanted to live a peaceful life in their own world. Seize him, holy maiden!" Bai Ning roared as she struggled to break the ice around her. Several cracks began to appear in the crystallized ice, but Rowena simply turned her gaze back to Bai Ning as the ice grew thicker, colder, and stronger. And she was responsible for all their deaths. Michael threw a cold, deadly glance at Bai Ning. Rowena clenched her fist as she couldn't simply believe the words coming out of Michael's mouth. "She slaughtered thousands of people, including children, yet you all call us evil. Anyone see the hypocrisy here?" Gaia snarled. "I am not here to prove myself. If you don't believe me, you can ask her after I lift the curse, which is why I am here," said Michael. He just threw a spark in Rowena's heart and hoped it would turn into a wildfire. Although Michael didn't spend much time with Rowena, he knew just enough to tell Rowena wouldn't have agreed to invade Itnes and slaughter the natives. "I heard no such reports of slaughter," Rowena coldly said as Noah agreed with a nod. "That's because it happened in another world," Gaia simply answered Rowena and turned her gaze to Bai Ning. "Why don't you ask her yourself?" Gaia pointed at Bai Ning. "Judging by how everyone looks, it seems this granny hasn't told anyone about her little adventure to another world." Gaia folded her arms as she stared at Bai Ning, who opened and closed her mouth like she was searching for a suitable answer to give Rowena. "As I said, lifting the curse is why we are here. To do that, I need those two out of here," Michael said to Noah, pointing at King Bredia and King Porter Forbes. Without saying another word, Porter made his way out of the hall. King Bredia, on the other hand, seemed reluctant for a moment until Noah reassured him with a nod. Then, King Breedia followed King Porter outside without making direct eye contact with the Dark Lord. After the two kings left the hall, only Diana, her children, Zanali and Bai Ning, remained in the hall with Gaia and Michael. When Bai Ning saw the holy maiden's murderous gaze on her, she felt a chill running down her spine. The old woman shivered and broke into a sweat. Now he might shake and squirm. "Do not panic," Michael's voice swept across the hall. No one dared to raise a finger against Michael as they remained completely still. It showed Michael how desperate they were. But there was something else that Michael could see in their eyes: trust. They trusted him that he wouldn't harm Ethan. Even Noah seemed to trust Michael. Granted, he might be their last hope, but still, he was surprised to see their trust in him. Michael waited until everyone nodded their heads. "Is it going to hurt him?" Sabrina asked Michael while holding Ethan's hand tight. "Not more than when he was stabbed," said Michael. Since Rowena was sitting next to Michael, she felt the air around Michael getting warm. Noah walked closer to his father and stood next to Michael. When Diana saw Dean standing between Noah and Rowena, her heart trembled. Looking at all four of her children together created some unknown feelings. Zanali couldn't believe the Dark Lord was standing right between the Holy Maiden and the Supreme Guardian. Just as Michael informed them, Ethan's body squirmed. Blood seeped through Ethan's eyes and nostrils. "You must have pissed off someone really powerful," said Michael as he placed his hand on Ethan's chest. His words were pointed at Noah. "I see two types of blood here." Gaia drew Diana's attention with her words. "Lord Ethan must have attacked the assassin and made him spill some blood." Gaia squatted beside a pool of blood where Ethan was stabbed by the assassin. The ground was soaked with cake and blood. Together, they formed a messy red paste. While Gaia was investigating the blood trail, the system informed Michael of everything he needed to know to break the curse. Unfortunately, it was not so simple as the curses Michael lifted till now. "No wonder they called me." Michael realized why they chose to call the Dark Lord himself despite all the history between them. Ethan finally stopped squirming when Michael took his hand off Ethan's chest. "I have good news and bad news," said Michael, standing to his feet. "I think you all want to hear the good news first." "Okay, here you go. I can lift the curse and heal him back to life with no side effects." Noah heaved a sigh of relief. Everyone, including Zanali, looked relieved to hear Michael. Diana's decision to summon the Dark Lord seemed to be the right decision despite the consequences they would face afterward to Zanali. "What's the bad news?" Noah asked Michael. "The curse is a lot more complicated than I anticipated. I need certain things to lift the curse. Certain things you might not approve of." Michael turned his gaze to Noah. "What do you need?" asked Diana with a cold tone. No matter what he asked, Diana was willing to give them. Unlike typical curses, the curse put on him is sentient. It's like a parasite, slowly eating through his soul. As long as it's alive, the host's soul will be devoured. So I need to give the curse a new host, kill it with the host, and heal him. Otherwise, the curse will end his life in about 5 hours. Michael explained how the curse put on Ethan works. To be honest, he was surprised and terrified at the same time of the curse. One thing was for sure: whoever put the curse must be insanely powerful or resourceful, to say the least. "You need a vessel to hold the curse," Rowena said as Michael nodded. "The vessel must be emptied out of its soul not more than 5 minutes before without harming the vessel itself. In other words, you have to kill someone without hurting the body," Gaia explained to the others in case they didn't understand Michael. "Just bring me someone stronger than or a fusion stage cultivator." Michael waved his hands before making his way to the sofa on the other side of Ethan. He plunged onto the sofa and put his leg atop one. "You might want to loosen your no-kill rule if you want to save your father, Supreme Guardian," Michael calmly said with a slightly devilish grin on his face. Looking at the Dark Lord sitting there like this was his own homemade Xanalis blood boil. The murderer who slaughtered thousands of people and her best friend was sitting before her surrounded by people who were responsible for taking him down, yet they could do nothing. It was simply outrageous. Noah was speechless for a moment as Ethan began to cough out dark blood. The webs of dark veins started to spread through his body despite the ice around the stand wound. You better hurry, said Michael. Then he took out a healing potion from his space ring and sent it floating toward Noah. That would keep him from dying until the curse is lifted. Noah stared at the healing potion hovering before his face without batting an eye. Seeing Noah's reluctance to take the healing potion and give it to his father, Michael simply laid back on the sofa and said, "If I want to harm your father, I just have to leave simply." Ethan coughed up more blood while Noah pondered about whether to take the healing potion or not. With each passing second, Ethan's condition became worse as the dark veins reached the side of his cheek. Having no other choice, Noah took the healing potion and poured it into Ethan's mouth. Little did Noah know the healing potion was infused with nanites. In other words, Noah gave Ethan the blood tonic, enabling Michael to end Ethan's life with a snap of his finger. Chapter 867. Eating a soul in front of Noah. Michael didn't intend to harm or hurt Ethan, but he liked to have as many trump cards as possible against Noah. After Noah unknowingly emptied the blood tonic into Ethan's mouth, Rowena prepared herself to bring a prisoner from Sky Hall itself. Considering Rowena knew why Noah decided not to kill anymore, she didn't let her little brother go through choosing someone to die. "I'll be back," Rowena said before heading straight back to her room, where she had the teleportation array to reach her floating castle. Meanwhile, Michael laid back on the staff and threw his hands wide. "What more can you tell me about the assassin's trail?" Diana came to Gaia and asked, hiding her killing intent from showing in her eyes. Gaia was surprised for a moment as Diana always seemed kind, calm, and compassionate. But the way she questioned her tickled a nerve inside Gaia. Within the kind, compassionate woman, there was something else. Normally, Gaia would have said to go ask the Guardians. However, she had a soft spot for Ethan and Diana as they always treated them kindly. Because of the kindness Diana showed Michael, Gaia helped her a bit. Of course, Diana was an expert hunter, probably one of the best trackers, yet at that moment her mind was in disarray. Hence, Diana sought Gaia's help, another best tracker. Gaia pointed at the pool of blood near the cake. The assassin was clever enough to avoid leaving a blood trail of his own. An artifact he wore quickly closed the wound on his shoulder before he disappeared, but not before shedding some blood onto the ground. Unless one was a Naga, the blood on the ground would look the same. Since Gaia was one, she was able to see two distinct bloods on the ground. You may not notice, but there are two types of blood here. One belongs to a human and the other. Gaia dipped her finger inside the blood and brought it before her eyes. She started at the blood on her finger for a moment. "If I have to guess, a beastman," Gaia said. "Beastman," Diana mumbled under her breath. Gaia had no idea, she just gave Harriet Hunt her next target location. Even if it took Diana to search the entire kingdom and kill hundreds of beastmen, she would find the assassin or at least a clue about him. While they were waiting for Rowena to bring someone for Michael to kill, they heard a door creaking open. As they looked up at the second-floor balcony, they were surprised to see Princess Catherine and Andrews. When Princess Catherine and Andrews saw the Dark Lord leisurely sitting in their main hall, they were startled to the core. "You!" Princess Catherine growled as she climbed down the stairs with a large belly. Andrews supported her in climbing down the stairs. Fortunately, Andrews saw Noah and Zanali in the hall, which gave him the courage to stand still without shivering in front of Ghost. Andrews still had nightmares of the time he almost got beaten to death by Ghost during the tournament. "What are you doing here?" "Noah, what is he doing here?" Catherine growled. Compared to the fact the Dark Lord was here, Ethan became less important in Catherine's eyes. One couldn't blame her though, as any mother would be freaked out to share a space with a man who slaughtered thousands of people without discrimination and destroyed an entire kingdom. Catherine felt a chill when Gaia walked past her, giving her a devilish grin. She sat beside the Dark Lord and waited for Noah to respond to Catherine. "Everything is under control, Catherine. He is here to help Father. Are you out of your mind, Noah?" Catherine raised her voice. Unfortunately, Catherine still hadn't moved on from the time Michael beat Andrew to a pulp, slaughtered her father's royal guards, beat him to a pulp on his own throne, and threatened to kill her and her unborn child. Her anger and fury blinded her intellect. Usually, Diana would have shut her up, but Diana was too focused on the pool of blood. She was formulating a whole new plan to invade the Beastmen kingdom and track down the one who sent the assassin. You are the Supreme Guardian. How could you trust this evil murdering? Catherine gritted her teeth as her mind went blank in overwhelming anger. I see you haven't changed a bit over the past years, Gaia calmly said. Why are you here? Go back to the shelter and stay there, said Noah. Do you think we'll be safe when he's here? Catherine rebuked. So riddle me this, princess. If I am so evil like you claim, isn't it better to keep your mouth shut, especially with a baby inside you? Michael's simple question made Catherine quickly shut her mouth. Noah clenched his fist, seeing Ghost threatening his own family in his own home. However, he had to keep his anger under control. After all, Ghost was the only one who could save Ethan. You bastard, Catherine cussed before leaving the main hall as fast as she came. Mother, Sabrina called Diana, who seemed to be deep in her own thoughts. Mother, only when Sabrina called her twice did Diana snap back to reality. Where is Rowena? Diana asked Sabrina. She went to bring someone, Sabrina weakly said. How is Hammond, by the way? Michael asked Noah. The question completely startled Noah. Don't be too surprised, Noah. Keep him safe because too many people are looking for him, said Michael. He wanted to play mind games with Noah and hoped it might get Noah to make a mistake. The dwarves desperately scoured through the kingdoms to find Hammond so they could continue making weapons of mass destruction. On the other hand, the Empress wanted Hammond to answer for his crimes one way or another. Noah wanted to keep Hammond safe and use his brains for good. In simple terms, they all wanted Hammond to be alive. That was where Michael differed. Unlike them, he wanted Hammond dead. Not that Michael was afraid of his little toys, but Hammond could become an annoyance to him and an asset to Noah. And that irked Michael in the wrong way. That includes you, right? Noah coldly asked. I am actually surprised that you keep him safe instead of putting him on trial for his crimes. Michael ignored Noah's question and talked about Hammond's crimes. Just as Michael expected, Noah's eyes glistened with doubt and shock. Am I the only evildoer and criminal in your eyes? Michael chuckled. Hammond is not a criminal, Noah said. He didn't tell you, did he? Michael pretended to be surprised. The next time you see him, why don't you ask him about a little village called Hog's Feet in Gondolin? Said Michael. Noah did a thorough background search on Hammond and came up with no criminal records. In fact, Noah wasn't wrong either. Hammond was not a criminal by any means. However, he was responsible for the deaths of 150 villagers. The Empress punished everyone involved in their deaths except for Hammond. To keep the news from spreading and Hammond's secret safe, the Empress wiped off all the evidence and trials about the Hog's Feet incident. The village just simply vanished from the face of the world, and the map, and no one had ever talked about it until now. Noah had so many questions running around his mind, but before he could inquire the Dark Lord about them, Rowena returned to the main hall, dragging an orc in chains. The orc's hands and legs were tied with iron chains, and his mouth was covered with a piece of cloth, preventing the orc from making a sound. Rowena dragged the orc by his long hair like he was a doll and threw him at Michael's feet. Hey, race your vessel, Rowena said. What did he do? Noah asked Rowena. Went rogue and slaughtered innocent people, Rowena answered Noah while looking at Bai Ning. She wordlessly told the old woman that if what the Dark Lord said about her was true, she would suffer the same fate as the orc. Michael calmly rose from the sofa and lifted the orc by his neck in one hand. Suddenly, the light orcs and the chandeliers started to flicker. Soon, the light they produced was snuffed out by an invisible force. Instead, darkness occupied every inch of the hall. Zanali took a step back due to her subconscious fear and saw the orc squirm in the Dark Lord's hands. The light coming through the windows and the door barely illuminated the white smoke emerging from the orc's mouth. Noah saw Ghost inhale the white smoke as the light of life slowly left the orc's eyes. Every fiber in Noah's body told him to stop Ghost from killing the orc, except he knew it was the only way to save Ethan. Besides, he didn't think Rowena would let him stop Ghost. Unlike him, his big sister had no quarrels with killing criminals, and those deserved it. The orc's soul turned into experience points while the badass points skyrocketed through the roof. He killed someone in front of the Supreme Guardians, and there was nothing he could do about it. The system deemed the action pretty badass. After Michael devoured the orc's soul, he threw the empty vessel to the ground and cracked his neck. Gradually, the lights that went out slowly came back to life, lighting the place. "What did you do?" Zanali asked in shock. She had never seen such an act of evil as he devoured the orc's soul completely. The power of eating one's soul made Zanali tremble in fear. Even Noah was startled by this strange power. According to Andreas, one's soul was the key to entering the afterlife. By destroying the soul itself, the Dark Lord made them completely cease to exist without letting them enter into an afterlife. What he did was a punishment worse than death. "He didn't deserve this," Noah muttered. "And Father doesn't deserve this either," Rowena rebuked Noah's comment. She knew the reason behind Noah's no-kill rule and even accepted Noah's decision, although she thought the rule would hinder Noah's progression. However, she would not let Noah's rules hurt her family. Family was everything to Rowena, and she would do anything to protect them. Chapter 868, Back to the Fire Realm. Congrats to the host for killing a fusion stage, level 6 orc. The reward is 500,000 experience points as well as 20,000 badass points. The Soul Eater has absorbed the soul of the orc. The host has received 300,000 experience points. Michael received 800,000 experience points in total because of the Soul Eater. If he had simply killed the orc, he would have only received 500,000 experience points. The Soul Eater awarded extra experience points based on how evil the absorbed soul was. Since Michael received 300,000, he could tell the orc led a pretty evil life on contrary to his fellow orc kind. It was an extremely rare occurrence to see an evil orc in the world, as the orcs lived peacefully, studying and mastering rune mastery. After shocking everyone by absorbing the orc's soul, Michael felt stronger. He threw the orc's body to the ground and strolled toward Ethan. "The curse won't let us take him outside this hall. So you might want to take a good look at your house," said Michael. "Wait," Noah asked Michael to wait. He then turned his gaze toward Sabrina and Diana. "Mother, Sabi, you two should go to the shelter and stay there," Noah said. Among everyone in the hall, Sabrina and Diana were the weaker, or at least that's what everyone thought. Little did Noah know his mother was a fusion stage level 10 cultivator, pretending to be at the body strengthening stage. Although Michael sensed something amiss with Diana's energy radiation, he couldn't see through her cultivation. The mark put on by the mysterious oracle was strong enough to keep Diana safe from even the eyes of Skyhall. "Sabi, do as your brother says," Diana said, but she didn't seem to be moving an inch away. "No. I want to be at his side." Sabrina shook her head. She looked at Michael for his support, but he stayed away from their family quarrel. "It's going to be dangerous, Sabi. We cannot focus on protecting you once something happens." Noah tried to reason with Sabrina, only to see her ignore his words. "I can fight too," Sabrina bluntly said. Michael noticed Sabrina taking steps toward Sabrina without uttering a word. "Rowena, tell them I can dash." Sabrina's words were abruptly cut short when Sabrina grabbed her shoulder and teleported her to the shelter. In a blink of an eye, Sabrina vanished into thin air. "You know she hates that," Noah sighed. "This is no time to argue," Rowena coldly said. "What about her?" Michael asked, looking at Diana. At least Sabrina was at the soul refining stage. Compared to Sabrina, Diana was weak as a newborn baby. So even if the curse didn't mutate the orc's body and stayed at the fusion stage, Diana wouldn't even be able to survive the battle, let alone fight. According to the system, there was a 98% chance for the curse to make the vessel stronger. Asking Diana to hit the shelter was the sensible thing to do, but it was Rowena and Noah's task, not his. As much as he cared for Lady Diana, he wasn't going to argue with her. If she wanted to stay and become collateral, it was her fate, and she couldn't blame anyone but herself. "Don't even think about it." Rowena took a step forward toward Diana when Michael heard Diana coldly warn Rowena. For the first time, Michael noticed the sudden change in Diana's demeanor. Gaia also noticed this change and could tell this woman might not be what she seemed to be. "Mother, you can't be here," said Rowena. In front of her mother, Rowena lost her coldness and turned into a caring child. "I will, and there is nothing you can do about it." Diana raised her one hand and refused to leave the hall. Then she turned her gaze at Michael. "Ghost, you can begin," Diana said. Noah and Rowena looked at each other as they could tell there was no point in arguing with their mother. To be honest, they hadn't seen her like this forever. As much as they liked Diana to leave the hall, they had no way of making her leave except by force. However, they couldn't bring themselves to forcefully teleport her mother like Rowena did to Sabrina. "Wait," Rowena stopped Michael once again. "Time is running out." Michael creased his brows. He hated this kind of family drama. Since Michael had no idea how strong Diana was, he thought it was stupid of Diana to stay in the hall. If he was in Noah's place, he would have teleported Diana by force without giving a second thought. After all, it was better to suffer Diana's wrath afterward than cry beside her dead body. Unfortunately, Noah and Rowena respected Diana to the point they didn't even dare to raise a finger against her word. In Michael's eyes, it was pretty stupid. "Do not let her out of your sight," Rowena warned Noah as she finally accepted that Diana was not going to leave the hall. "Here we go," Michael mumbled as he placed his hand on Ethan's chest. "System, start the process." Michael ordered the system. Zanali and Gaia strolled toward Ethan and stood beside their lovers. They all stood around Ethan in a circle and completely ignored by Ning. None of them batted an eye as they stared at Michael's hand on Ethan's chest. Soon, they heard a strange otherworldly whistling noise as Ethan groaned in pain. The whistling sound gradually turned into a scream, an angered scream. "Prepare yourselves," Michael warned them. The curse resisted the pull and screamed inside his head. The others were fortunate enough not to hear the curse's scream. Blood trickled down his nostrils due to the curse's resistance, but Michael ignored all the pain and focused on pulling out the curse from Ethan's body. Unfortunately, pulling out the curse from Ethan's body was the easiest part. Judging by the blood coming out of Ghost's nose and the pain in his face showed Noah how difficult it was to remove the curse. Moments like this made Noah question whether the Dark Lord was really the evil Andreas claimed him to be. His mentor always talked about the dark future, where people were stripped of their free will and turned into zombies that worshipped the Dark Lord forever. Suppose the Dark Lord was really that evil, why did he even bother to save his father? It would make more sense if he let Ethan die than save him. Noah wished Andreas could see everything and give him a proper explanation for the Dark Lord's actions. At that moment, Noah had no other explanation that the Dark Lord had humanity and was grateful enough to save his ally. As the screaming sounded louder and louder, they all saw a ball of red glow coming out of Ethan's chest. The ball of light frantically vibrated under Ghost's hands to get back into Ethan's body. Michael grabbed the ball of light with both his hands and turned his gaze at Noah. "Lift his body." Michael motioned to Noah to lift the orc's body. Noah immediately picked the orc by his shoulders as Michael looked at Rowena. "As soon as I send this curse into the orc, teleport Lord Ethan somewhere else. Can you do that?" "Yes." Rowena bobbed her head up and down. Meanwhile, Noah held the orc straight by his broad shoulders. "Fuck, it's stronger than I thought." Michael gritted his teeth as he slowly moved the ball of light toward the orc's mouth. Bai Ning watched the scene with open mouth. She was completely speechless by the power she felt from the curse. What shocked her more was the power radiation from the curse felt just the same as the power radiation she felt from the mysterious lord she talked to. The old woman was spot on, as the curse indeed originated from Andor, the god of space and time. But although Andor ordered Skyhall to attempt to assassinate Ethan and created the curse, he didn't intend to curse Ethan. On the contrary, Andor just wanted an assassin to try to kill Ethan, then blamed the Dark Lord for the attempt on Ethan's life and expected Noah to retaliate. His plan took a turn when someone switched the assassin's blade with the cursed dagger. As a result, the assassin cursed Ethan when he stabbed him with it. Since Ethan cut the assassin with the dagger when he fought back, the assassin got cursed in return. Hence, even if Diana managed to find the assassin, he would be long dead unless Andor himself appeared to save the assassin. Despite the curse's counterforce, Michael was strong enough to resist the curse and move it to the orc. "Cut him open," Michael said to Noah, gritting his teeth. Noah immediately flicked his wrist as the white hilt sword appeared in his hand. Without wasting a second, Noah stabbed the orc from behind and cut his chest open. Michael growled as he pushed the ball of light into the bleeding cut. The moment Michael pushed the ball of light, aka the curse, into the orc's body, Rowena emptied a healing potion down Ethan's mouth and teleported him to the shelter. As soon as Ethan disappeared from the main hall, a blast of energy shot out of the orc and sent everyone around, flying away. Even Michael couldn't escape from the blast as he hit the wall pretty hard, forming a human-sized hole in the wall. Arg! A roar of agony echoed through the entire kingdom. The thunderous roar made everyone immediately close their ears. Michael managed to lift his head and look at the orc. He stood where Ethan was, with dark webs running through his body. The orc's eyes literally glowed like someone lit a fire in them. In a few seconds, the orc's jade-green body turned darker with all the webs of cursed energy. When Michael was about to rise to his feet, the orc let out another roar. The last thing Michael remembered before everything turned black was the house crumbling down. He felt the space around him distort, the feeling similar to activating a teleportation array. Just as he thought, the darkness faded away, revealing a barren red land under a stormy sky. "Where am I?" Michael asked as he looked around. "Fire Realm," he heard Rowena's voice from the side. Chapter 869. Sealbear. The Fire Realm was a seismically active landscape, with streams of flowing magma and expanses of semi-molten rock and hardened purple stone. The land was studded with small volcanoes and flame spouts, which regularly spurted a flaming gas. The temperature was hot enough to melt a body-strengthening stage cultivator like a wax statue. Due to the volcanic ashes and specks of flame in the air, nothing could be clearly seen by the naked eye. If the volcanoes weren't bad enough, the sandstorms and occasional thunderstorms worsened everything. Diana slowly picked herself up from the ground and looked around her to see where she was. The curse teleported her into a canyon surrounded by semi-molten rock and flowing magma. Just the sight of it helped her realize where she was. Although the realm looked somewhat similar to the demon's grave, the temperature was much higher than the demon's grave. As a result, Diana realized she was teleported to the Fire Realm. Unfortunately, she was not a stranger to the Fire Realm. "I need to find my kids," Diana mumbled under her breath. Since the orc teleported them here, Diana guessed slaying the orc might teleport them back to Pentown. But before that, she had to find her children. She hoped they weren't in trouble. Ignoring the sandstorm, Diana made her way forward. She tore her sleeves and covered her mouth with the cloth. The storm became worse by the second. Onward she went, searching for her children and the orc. On her way, she spread her senses to detect any threats around her. The last time Diana was here, she almost burned down the entire Hell City, the only settlement inside the Fire Realm. Instead of scouring through the entire realm blindly, Diana decided to reach Hell City and hoped her children would share the same thought unless they came across the orc first. For a moment, she had to be optimistic. When Diana's senses detected no threat or life signs around her, she quickly ascended into the air and flew out of the canyon. A few seconds later, Diana landed on a naturally formed stone structure. From atop, she could see Barrow Land outside the canyon. Unfortunately, she still couldn't locate Hell City. Luckily for her, she had a compass in her space ring. It was given to her by her mentor when she was training to be the next Holy Maiden. Never in a million years, Diana thought she had to use the compass once again. But she had no other choices considering flying in higher altitudes would attract monsters that roamed the sky. She wanted to avoid unnecessary battles while she was in the Fire Realm. With a flick of her wrist, Diana took out a compass made out of emerald green metal. The needle and the letters were etched with gold as the glass covering the compass had several cracks. Holding the compass in her hand brought down some memories she really wanted to forget. For a moment, she shoved these memories back into her mind and held the compass in her palm. The needle slowly moved until it stopped, pointing at the southwest side. Hell City. Diana heaved a heavy sigh before putting the compass back into her space ring. When she was about to fly toward Hell City, Diana heard something fall onto the ground with a loud thud. She turned around, and to her surprise, she saw Bai Ning, still trapped by Rowena's frost. Despite the scorching hot temperature, the frost held Bai Ning firm. Except for a few cracks, the ice shell looked unharmed by the fire realm. Arg! Bai Ning growled as she tried to break out of the ice crystal. But when she saw Diana, she heaved a sigh of relief. "Diana!" Bai Ning called out to Diana as she slowly made her way toward the old woman. While she was walking toward Bai Ning, her mind replayed Michael's words. "She slaughtered thousands of people, including children, yet you all call us evil. Anyone see the hypocrisy here?" Gaia's voice sounded inside her head. "You have to bring me to that flowing lava." Bai Ning looked at the molten lava canal flowing deeper into the canyon. The ice crystal trapped her within was created by a Hal immortal. Usually, she could have shattered it without breaking a sweat. However, the cold flames boosted Rowena's power to the next level. Every spell in her arsenal got strengthened by the primordial flames, especially the spells related to the water element. That was why Bai Ning couldn't easily break the crystal. Of course, she could break out of the crystal in time, except Bai Ning didn't want to be trapped in the crystal for long. She was a sitting duck to the monsters roaming around the fire realm. They might not be able to kill her, but it didn't mean it wouldn't hurt when they chewed through her skin and bones. Some of the monsters in the fire realm were even capable of killing an immortal and eating their souls, just like the Dark Lord absorbed the orc's soul. "Hurry up!" Bai Ning rushed Diana. In her rush to break out the crystal, Bai Ning overlooked the killing intent in Diana's eyes. But not for long. When the old woman saw how slow Diana was walking toward her, she felt something was amiss. "Is there a monster nearby?" Bai Ning quickly asked Diana when a sword materialized in the latter's hand. "Yes," Diana coldly answered Bai Ning. "You have to hurry. If I don't get out of this, we are both doomed," Bai Ning urged. "Can you see how strong the monster is?" Bai Ning asked as she tried to sense the monster herself. When she sensed no monsters around, Bai Ning creased her old brows. "It's right in front of me," Diana coldly answered Bai Ning again. The calm and kind woman Bai Ning knew was nowhere to be found in the woman before her. She seemed different, like a natural-born killer, a wounded predator. Those eyes staring at her burned rage and pain. "What are you blabbering about, woman?" Bai Ning growled. The old woman was losing her patience with Diana until she saw something she couldn't believe. The ball of light blinded Bai Ning and made her close her eyes. "Primordial flames," Bai Ning muttered. The bright light blinding her was a primordial flame. Bai Ning had no doubts whatsoever. Nothing else could radiate such pure energy. The question was how this weak, feeble woman wielded the primordial flame. Even with her eyes closed, she could see the brilliance of the primordial flame. Under the light flame's heat, the crystal around Bai Ning began to melt down. When Bai Ning felt the crystal loosening, she slowly opened her eyes. She had so many questions in her mind, but before she could ask, Diana raised her sword. Bai Ning's eyes sparkled, seeing the primordial flames coiling around the black sword. As Bai Ning opened her mouth to question Diana, she sent the sword through the old woman's mouth. The old woman groaned as crimson-red fumes escaped out of her mouth. Bai Ning squirmed like a worm trapped within the frost crystal. The light flames vaporized the blood while melting Bai Ning's skin on her face. If Bai Ning had any artifacts or runes to protect her life, she might have had a chance to escape Diana's wrath. Unfortunately for Bai Ning, she had nothing. In other words, Bai Ning was too cocky as she thought who would dare to attack an immortal and the Sky Hall's elder. It was natural to develop such cockiness when one had lived thousands of years without having an enemy. Moreover, Bai Ning never expected Diana to possess a primordial flame. How could she ever expect a body-strengthening stage weakling to have not only primordial flame but a weapon capable enough to withstand one? Suppose Diana didn't have light flames and her black sword, any other swords would have shattered into pieces when she stabbed Bai Ning. But the light flames changed the outcome of the battle completely. Plus, Bai Ning was trapped within ice crystals made of cold flames. So one could say Bai Ning had to overcome two primordial flames, and it was impossible for her. Diana pulled out her sword and stabbed Bai Ning in the eyes again and again, venting all the rage buried within her. Finally, the ice trapping Bai Ning shattered under the light flame's heat. Even after Diana stabbed Bai Ning repeatedly, the old woman's body squirmed on the ground with life. "All these years, I have to see you hold my little girl hostage," Diana snarled as she stomped Bai Ning's chest. "I watched you turn her into the Holy Maiden, a weapon to be used against my sons." Diana kept stomping Bai Ning's chest until her ribs shattered. The boiling rage she felt activated the ancient god's blood in her body, temporarily boosting her cultivation power to the half-immortal stage. Diana even tripped down in pure rage and hit the ground on her knees. "You will manipulate her no more." Diana started to stab the old woman and went crazy. Blood spurted out, painting Diana's white robes red. She didn't stop stabbing her until the old woman's body was in pieces. When she stopped, there was no body on the ground for her to stab, just some pieces of burnt flesh remained. Finally, Diana let go of the black swords and put out the light flames. She started to breathe heavily as she fell down to the ground beside Bai Ning's pieces. When Diana thought everything was over, a black lightning bolt struck the ground where she killed Bai Ning and blasted Diana away. The black lightning existed for just a split second. During that split second, a glowing rune resembling a black skull appeared from Bai Ning's blood and vanished along with the lightning bolt. Unknown to Diana, she destroyed a seal designed by the past Dark Lord. As a result, the array placed between the mortal realm and the god realm weakened. If all those seals were destroyed, the war between the mortals and the gods would finally start. Chapter 870. Gaia vs. Zanali. Somewhere else in the Fire Realm, Gaia and Zanali landed on a barren land. There was nothing except a few boulders as far as they could see. Gaia picked herself up and brushed off the red sand from her black dress. When she saw Zanali a few meters away, she let out a devilish grin. Gaia clenched her fist as the APD injected a healing potion into her bloodstream, lessening the pain of hitting the ground hard. She didn't worry about Michael because she knew he could take care of himself. Besides, she was too focused on Zanali to think about anything else. This was a golden opportunity. They hadn't been alone since Zanali was 6 years old. At that time, Gaia tried to smother Zanali to death with the pillow. She would have succeeded if it wasn't for a maid who managed to stop Gaia at the wrong time. Since then, they had never let Zanali alone with Gaia. Zanali growled and slowly stood up to her feet. Her brows creased as she realized where she was. However, her creased brows froze on her face when she noticed Gaia walking toward her. Zanali's instincts screamed at her as she prepared herself to fight Gaia. Anyone with a single brain cell could tell there was no way Zanali could defeat Gaia, no matter how many legendary spells she had in her arsenal. Gaia was at the half-immortal stage level 4, while Zanali was just at the soul-refining stage. Gaia could kill Zanali without breaking a sweat. However, killing Zanali quickly was not Gaia's plan. "It's you and me alone," Gaia said with her hands behind her back. She slowly circled around Zanali like a predator stalking its prey. "What a poor kitty. It seems like no one is coming to save your ass," Gaia ridiculed Zanali. Although Gaia was a princess just like Zanali, nothing was ever handed down to Gaia. She had to fight for every single thing in her life against her own family. But Zanali, on the other hand, never suffered a day in her life. While she was in Nagaland, Salisi and the kingdom had her back, and when she joined the Guardian Guild, Peyton was there to take care of her. Even after Peyton died, Noah took her under his wings and fell in love with her. All these emotions Gaia had turned into an absolute hatred and rage towards Zanali. Hence, Gaia wanted this fight to last long. "I don't need anyone to save me," Zanali tried to remain calm. "Bitch, you kidding me?" Gaia broke into laughter. The sound of her laughter swept across the barren lands. "You always had someone to look after you." Salisi, Kasten, Noah, Peyton Dash. "Do not speak her name." Zanali stomped the ground when she heard Gaia speak Peyton's name. Her eyes immediately turned bloodshot, burning in rage. "You and Ghost will pay for what you did to her," Zanali growled as Gaia continued to circle around Zanali. "No, we won't," Gaia chuckled. Even your precious Supreme Guardian had to come to us, to save his own father. If it wasn't for the Dark Lord, your Noah wouldn't have a family right now. He saved Diana from an assassin in her own home. He saved Sabrina from being tortured and turned into a vampire. And now he saved Ethan, who apparently got stabbed in front of all his family. You'd be a fool to think Noah could protect anyone when he can't even protect his own. Gaia spoke slowly as every single word came out loud and clear. When the sun rises tomorrow, the entire world will know how the Supreme Guardian begged for the Dark Lord's help to save his father. Gaia grinned. That's your whole plan, isn't it? I knew you didn't help him out of the goodness in your heart. There is no kindness in your black heart, Gaia. I can't believe we share the same blood as our father, Zanali snickered. Surprisingly, Zanali's eyes glistened with a bit of sadness. Despite how Gaia tried to kill her when she was little, Zanali used to look up to her big sister and love her with all her heart. Zanali lost count of how many times she talked her father out of punishing Gaia for all the crimes she committed throughout the kingdom. But Zanali realized how wrong she was to believe Gaia would change when she raised a prison filled with almost 2,000 prisoners to the ground, burning every single one alive. Zanali would give anything to go back to that day and stop Gaia from slaughtering all those people who deserved a second chance in their lives. Sorry to burst your bubble, Zanali. You and I are not sisters. You think so? Zanali snickered without realizing the true meaning of Gaia's words. We stopped being sisters the moment you burned those prisoners alive. Zanali growled as the images of the burning prison flashed across her eyes. Everyone in Nagaland knew Gaia was cold and cruel like her mother, but no one imagined she would be heartless enough to burn defenseless prisoners alive. What shocked them more was Gaia never regretted her actions. Zanali still vividly remembered the moment they captured Gaia and brought her before the king. You better kill me now, father. Screw this up, and you will pay with your life. Zanali heard Gaia's vengeful words. She spoke to her moments before Castan broke her meridians, crippling her for life. You failed to grasp the meaning just as always. Gaia shook her head and decided to simplify her words to Zanali. Castian is not my father. He is just a puppet my mother put on the throne. I don't have a single drop of Castian's blood in me. Zanali's mind went blank as Gaia continued. I always had a feeling how this spineless bitch could be my father. So imagine how glad I was when I learned he is not my father. No, you're lying. Zanali muttered. But don't worry, he is definitely your father. You inherited his absolute stupidity. Gaia laughed once again as she loved seeing the dumb look on Zanali's face. Since he is not my father, I won't feel a bit of remorse for what I am going to do to him. Gaia finally stopped circling around Zanali. She looked Zanali in the eyes with a devilish grin. I won't let you hurt him. Zanali clenched her fist. I don't make threats. I make promises. So listen to me carefully. One day I will walk into the throne hall, put an arrow through his heart, and throw his bleeding body out of my throne. If you want to stop that, you just have to kill me. Gaia opened her arms and motioned for Zanali to attack her. Let's end this right here, right now. Zanali stepped forward with her clenched fist. As much as Zanali was shocked to hear Gaia was not her sister, she cared for her father more and lost her sanity when Gaia threatened to kill Castian. She didn't even care that Gaia was a half-immortal who could kill her with a snap of her fingers. At that moment, Zanali wanted to take down Gaia one way or another. Because of Gaia's overwhelming hatred for Zanali, she broke her own rule of capitalizing on cultivation power and decided to beat the hell out of Zanali. This was a fight with no cultivation, no spells, and no tricks. Come on, bitch. You and me. Gaia motioned her to make the first move and stood still. When Zanali reached an arm's distance from Gaia, she punched Gaia with all her strength. Instead of blocking or evading the punch, Gaia stood there and took the punch without moving an inch. Zanali's hand went numb as she felt like she had punched a stone wall. Despite the numbed hand, Zanali repeatedly punched Gaia in the face. When Zanali punched Gaia for the 50th time, a tiny drop of blood trickled down the corner of Gaia's mouth. Zanali stopped punching to take a breath as Gaia spat the blood out and wiped off her mouth. My turn, said Gaia before uppercutting Zanali in the jaw. The sheer power behind Gaia's punch sent Zanali flying into the air. 5 meters. 10 meters. 20 meteors. She flew higher and higher from the ground until Gaia leaped into the air and punched Zenali again midair. Another shock wave exploded upon Gaia's fist, hitting Zenali's face. Blood sprayed out of Zenali's mouth as she soared down to the ground and hit the ground, forming a small crater around her. Gaia dived down like a rocket, aiming to land directly on Zenali's chest. But Zenali managed to roll around just in time. Her ribs would have shattered if she was a split second late to react. Cultivation power or not, Gaia trained her body to fight head-to-head with Michael himself. She was strong enough to lift half a ton of marble without even using arch energy. In other words, she was a monster with or without cultivation power. Zenali stood no chance against her. After she rolled away, Gaia landed in the crater as the ground cracked open. Zenali jumped back to her feet and threw her fist, only to see Gaia evade the punch and Spartan kick her in the chest. The kick made Zenali cough up blood while flinging backward like a kite without an anchor. Zenali slid through the ground, leaving a dusty trail. Every bone in Zenali's body ached as blood trickled down from her nose and mouth. Despite the pain, Zenali picked herself up to fight Gaia. "You must be a special kind of idiot to think you can win this fight," Gaia said, cracking her fists. "It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog." Zenali wiped off the blood from her mouth and said, "You fight to kill. I fight to save." "There is a difference," said Zenali. "My stupid sister," Gaia shook her head, disappointed with Zenali. "Will and purpose do not matter when you are an ant trying to move a mountain," said Gaia. "Come on then." Zenali slowly raised her hand and taunted Gaia to come at her. Chapter 871. Celestial Stage Threat. Gaia dashed at Zenali with one intention: beat her to death. She caught Zenali's fist before it could reach her face and headbutted in return. Zenali's nose broke with a sickening crunch. Blood spurted out of her broken nostrils as Gaia pulled Zenali close to her by hand and kicked her in the gut. Zenali vomited blood and felt her sight blur. Without giving any time for Zenali to retaliate, Gaia lifted Zenali by her waist and slammed her on the ground. Then, Gaia kicked her in the gut, sending her flying straight onto the boulder a few meters away. The boulder crumbled down with a loud boom when Zenali collided with it. Zenali barely uttered these words, coughing up blood. Hearing her words, Gaia halted her steps. "Cass may not be your father, but I always thought of you as my sister." Blood oozed out from her nose and mouth. Her pretty turned completely red from the blood. "That's not going to work on me," Gaia snickered. "Show me one loving little sister who ordered her big sister's meridians to be broken." Gaia's words were filled with rage and pain. Everyone blamed her for trying to kill Zenali when they were little. But no one bothered to ask why she did that. Since the day Zenali was born, Gaia was thrown away like a broken Troy. She received no love from her family, including her own father. While Gaia was having nightmares, Zenali slept peacefully in her mother's and father's embrace. The lack of attention and love turned into jealousy, and jealousy turned into hatred. Gaia thought she could get over the pity-hatred, but Zenali made it worse when she and Salisi ran the kingdom into the ground with their new policies and rules. Once Castian decided to give the throne to Zenali instead of her, Gaia finally snapped and went berserk. The source of all her hardships and problems was Zenali. If Zenali had never existed, she wouldn't have experienced everything she did. It was either breaking your meridians or killing you. "You are here because of me, because of what I chose," Zenali said, struggling to rise to her feet. As much as her mind wanted to fight, her body was beyond exhausted. Every fiber in her body ached, begging her to close her eyes and give up. "Your life is a handout I gave you," Zenali's voice stuttered. On the verge of death, Zenali remembered all her good memories with Gaia, although there were only a few. One of those good memories was the time Gaia came to her aid when a couple of tyrants tried to bully her without knowing she was a princess. Zenali could still vividly see how Gaia nearly beat those guys to death, shouting they deserved to die for laying their hands on her sister. Zenali had to stop Gaia from killing those bullies. Even after she grew up, Many feared speaking against Zanali as they feared offending Gaia. Like it or not, Zanali felt protected when Gaia was around. After hearing Zanali's words, Gaia dashed at her and grabbed her by her neck. She raised her to the air as Zanali's face slowly turned pale. "Go ahead. I can't fight anymore. If killing me will quench your thirst for revenge, do it," Zanali stuttered. Pialfadalfa knew. "Forgive me for existing." Zanali closed her eyes and prepared to embrace the sweet death by her sister's hands. Tears trickled down from her eyes as Gaia gritted her teeth. Silence fell over the area as the scorching wind breezed past them. The mere thought that she was alive because of Zanali made her blood boil. Her mind was telling her to end Zanali's life and a future threat to the Dark Army. However, her instincts and heart told otherwise. They told her to spare her life and settle the debt once and for all. At that moment, she wanted Michael to be by her side and tell her what to do. She closed her eyes and tried to feel a connection with him. To her surprise, she saw the sight of her and Michael standing atop the mountain hill, overlooking the dark ocean. "You know how much I hate slavery. That is a slavery of free men," Gaia heard Michael's words in her mind. After a brief moment of deep thinking, Gaia clenched her fist and let go of Zanali. It wouldn't take a second for her to kill Zanali. However, killing Zanali would make her indebted to Zanali forever. Gaia didn't want to live a life that was handed out to her by the one she hated the most. She would rather die than live the life Zanali gave her. Now that she spared Zanali's life when she could have easily ended her, it settled the debt between them. "This settles my debt. The next time you fight me, nothing will stop me from ending your life." Gaia punched Zanali in the face hard enough to knock her out completely. "The orc teleported us here," Michael heard Noah's voice. Unfortunately, Michael was teleported to the fire realm with Noah and Rowena. He stood between them and looked around the fire realm. What Noah said was the only explanation for how they reached the fire realm. Michael was surprised that the curse was able to teleport them to another realm. "We are not alone," Rowena coldly said. Although they were standing in an empty barrel land with several crates around them, they sensed another powerful being nearby. Rowena's voice had a bit of uneasiness, and Michael knew why. The being he sensed was several times stronger than him. To be precise, a half-celestial stage level 3 being. The sandstone blocking their view suddenly stopped and faded away, clearly revealing the empty, barren land around them. Michael wished the land was empty as it looked. Soon, a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes emerged from the ground and hovered in the air. The shadowy figure somehow resembled the orc Michael put the curse in. However, the figure seemed ethereal. A celestial stage being, Noah's brows arched up. "Noah, stay behind me," Rowena said to Noah. As the second strongest and his big sister, she felt responsible for Noah's safety. He was the weakest among them. "Giarish." The shadowy figure let out an angry growl. Michael made no sudden moves as he calculated his odds against the half-celestial stage. "System," Michael called out the system. "The host has a 20% chance of defeating the shadow monster if you fought alone. Suppose the host fought together with Rowena and Noah. In that case, you have a 45% chance of defeating the shadow monster." The system quickly analyzed the shadow monster according to Michael's order and informed him back. Michael did not like the odds at all. However, the system can sense Noah is on the verge of triggering his heavenly tribulation. If he succeeded, the host's chance of winning against the shadow monster would go up to 60%. "Noah, go ahead and start the heavenly tribulation." Rowena took Michael by surprise and ordered Noah to trigger his heavenly tribulation. "I will cover you," said Rowena. "This is not the time for tribulation." Noah shook his head. Michael didn't blame Noah for being reluctant to trigger his heavenly tribulation. Firstly, this was not a safe place for heavenly tribulation. Secondly, anyone would be afraid to start their heavenly tribulation in front of his arch-nemesis. The third reason would be the monsters roaming around the area. "You must be at the half-immortal stage for us to have any chance of defeating this monstrosity," said Rowena. The shadow monster calmly hovered in the air, as though it was waiting for the trio to make a move. As much as Michael liked to kill a half-celestial stage being and earn those sweet experience points, he remained still. Double-crossing Noah during his heavenly tribulation seemed tricky with Rowena around. It was still too early for him to piss off the Holy Maiden and receive the wrath of the entire Skyhall. Besides, he knew there was no way of killing Noah without a god-killing weapon. Even if Michael destroyed Noah during the tribulation, his soul would depart and find another vessel. Michael would be in the dark at that time without knowing Noah's new identity. As far as Michael was concerned, an unknown enemy was far too dangerous than the known one. The last thing Michael wanted Noah to have was anonymity. In other words, double-crossing Noah had more cons than pros. Finally, the monster lost his patience as it started to float toward them. Oh, Michael took a step back and slowly moved his hand to the dark swords. Michael would rather fight on his own than depend on Noah. Once he cast the death range and take the full Dark Lord form, he would be at Immortal stage level 9. Coupled with the dark flames, he was confident enough to fight the shadowy monster. Even if he couldn't take down the monster, he always had the option of using the system to teleport away. Sorry, host. The shadow monster has locked the space around, preventing the teleportation from being used. The system recommends the host man up and kills the monster. The system chuckled. The system expected Michael to fear the shadow monster and look for a way out of the battle. However, Michael had no signs of fear in his eyes whatsoever. He just cracked his neck and drew his dark swords. Noah. Rowena turned her cold gaze at Noah. There is no time to waste, Noah. Go away. I will take care of this, said Rowena, but Noah looked reluctant to listen to her. An ugly monstrosity like this can't take down your sister, Noah. Kill me. Michael rolled his eyes and cringed inside. He preferred the monster to attack them instead of listening to the two of them. Chapter 872. Powering up once again. Eventually, Rowena managed to convince Noah and send him away. Since Michael was the strongest and the most serious threat to its existence, it completely focused its rage on him. Despite the shadow monster's lack of facial features, Michael sensed deep hatred in its eyes. He thought it was because he had removed the curse from Ethan. However, the real reason was far from what he thought. This curse was just the simple version of the curse Andor created 5,000 years ago. He created the curse to affect the Dark Lord. When the battle between the Dark Lord and the mortal realm peaked, Andor unleashed the curse upon the Dark Lord. Only, the curse didn't fall on the Dark Lord but on the Dark Queen. So even after the Dark Lord reset the universe, the curse still remembered its origin and why it was created. The curse was sentient, after all. Black and red lightning bolts crackled around the dark swords in his hands. As the surroundings turned darker, Rowena felt the Dark Lord's power for the first time. Michael didn't hold back as he pushed his limit to the max. All the light around Rowena was sucked away by an invisible force as darkness completely enveloped them. She sensed the Dark Lord's power exponentially grow after the surroundings turned dark. The shadow monster halted its advancement when Michael's eyes turned completely black. Out of the blue, a shadowy spike shot out from the monster at lightning speed. Michael immediately raised his hand as the black shield appeared on his wrist and blocked the spike. Still, Michael was thrown backward for several meters before he came to a stop. The sheer force Michael felt cracked his ulna and radius. The APD immediately injected the healing potion into his bloodstream and started the healing process. In addition to the healing potion, Michael took the Berserker pills to enhance his physical prowess. When the shadow monster fired another shadow spike, Rowena retrieved her blades and tried to cut the spike into halves. However, she was too slow compared to the spike's speed. Even for Michael, the spike flew too quickly. He dashed away and still, the spike grazed him on the shoulder. Michael felt an intense pain in his shoulder. To his surprise, the dark flames appeared around his shoulder and burned the flesh in a blink of an eye. This was the first time Michael had seen the dark flames act without his command. Thanks to the APD, new flesh grew around his shoulder. Meanwhile, Rowena threw her blades at the shadow monster and shook the chains attached to them, creating a wave of shock blast. The shadow monster figure was slightly distorted by the shock wave, but she was too weak to cause any real damage. Jurish! The shadow monster roared, creating enough to blast Rowena away. Michael quickly dashed at Rowena and caught her mid-air by the chains of her blades. After Rowena safely landed on the ground, Michael threw one of the dark swords at the shadow monster. As the sword soared through the air, Michael raised his other dark sword, sending a bolt of lightning from the tip of the sword. The shadow monster dashed forward as the sword, and the lightning bolt went straight through its shadowy body. Michael immediately dashed out of the monster's path while shooting out dark beams from his eyes. Unfortunately, the dark beams went through the monster, just like the sword and the lightning bolt. While Michael was running around the monster, shooting dark beams, Rowena leaped into the air and brought down her blades upon the monster. But the shadow monster created a hand out of the blue and slapped Rowena to the ground. Rowena coughed up blood. The ground around her had several cracks due to the sheer force of Rowena hitting the ground. Her silky smooth skin was riddled with bruises and scars as blood oozed out of the cut on his shoulder. The monster did not stop with a slap as it tried to stomp Rowena to death. Michael immediately raised his hand, sending a powerful blast of wind. The wind blast threw Rowena out of the monster's reach. Without lowering his hands, Michael summoned the dark sword he threw at the monster. The dark sword trembled on the ground for a moment before flying straight back into his hands. After the sword reached his hand, Michael dashed at the monster. His black eyes started to glow red as someone lit a fire in them. Michael decided to fight head-to-head with the monster as he was confident in evading the monster's attack. Although it had the advantage in size and cultivation power, the monster lacked agility like him. The badass points soared through the roof as Michael slashed the shadow monster left and right. He moved with enough speed to leave after images, and Rowena was stunned by how quick he was. As much as Michael liked to slice and dice the shadow monster, its shadowy figure made it impossible to harm it. No matter how many lightning bolts and dark beams he fired, none affected the monster. The more Michael fought, the more he realized he had no chance of winning unless he found a way to transform the shadowy figure into something tangible. Even the ring of fire created with dark flames had no effect. Finally, Rowena drank a full vial of healing potion and jumped back to her feet. She tried to dash at the monster, joining Michael in the fight. At that moment, the monster fired 5 spikes from its body at Michael. He quickly raised the black shield to block the spikes coming directly at him and dashed away to evade the rest. But one spike managed to impale him through the chest. The force sent Michael flying as the black shield fell off his hand. Rowena turned around and flew straight toward Michael without batting an eye. Ha ha! The monster caught Rowena off guard with its sudden laughter. Instead of pressing its advantage, the monster ran around the blood spilled out of Michael's wound. The monster's devilish laughter echoed through the entire fire realm. Hearing the monster's laughter, more and more natives of the fire realm marched toward the area. Michael's blood, coupled with the shadow monster's laughter, drew the beasts of the fire realm to them. Ghost. Rowena saw Michael picking himself from the ground with the dark spikes sticking out of his chest. Seeing the blood flowing out of his chest ached Rowena's heart. This strange pain increased as Michael burned down the spike with the dark flames coming out of his hand. "What's it doing?" Michael asked Rowena, who stared at him, burning his own flesh. Just looking at the skin melting down sent a chill running down her spine. He didn't even flinch as he continued to melt down the skin until she could see the rib cage. "Stop it." Rowena couldn't bear to see him burn himself anymore. "It's okay," Michael assured her. Then, the skin slowly grew on his chest until the burn wound completely healed, leaving only a mark. "We don't stand a chance as long as it remains ethereal," said Michael. Rowena turned around and stood by Michael's side. "I might be able to help with that," said Rowena, clenching the blades. The next moment, Michael felt the sudden drop in the temperature around him. He looked down at the blades to see the silver blades slowly turning icy blue. The bone-chilling cold flames surrounded the blades, summoning intense frost upon them. "Freezing it. Good idea." Michael gave a nod of appreciation. He flicked his blades and prepared to shut the monster's laughter. But when he was about to take a step forward, he saw several flocks of crows in the air and groups of glass wraiths on the ground. They were all on their way to the shadow monster. Rowena was stunned to see the beasts of Fire Realm, especially the glass wraiths. Although the glass wraiths were relatively weak monsters, killing them was not easy at all. One had to shatter its body until it had no soul energy left to revive itself. At that moment, hundreds of them flocked toward them with one intention: kill them. Contrary to her reaction, Michael had a smile on his face. "You stupid dumb fuck," Michael cursed the monster. Not in anger but in excitement. In Rowena's eyes, they were beasts, while in Michael's eyes, they were bags of experience points. If he could kill them all, he would reach at least Immortal stage level 8 without a doubt. At that time, the death range would boost his power to the half-celestial stage. In other words, the shadow monster just ran out of luck. "Do you have a plan?" asked Rowena. "Keep the shadow monster busy while I deal with these insects," Michael calmly said. Without wasting any time, Michael ascended into the air as Rowena prepared herself to fight the shadow monster with the cold flames. Once Michael was in the air, he cast the lightning dash and flew straight toward the flock of giant crows. Even from afar, Michael began to bombard the crows with lightning bolts. The crows flew down from the sky like flies as Michael began to hear the sweet sound of experience points increasing. "Did you miss me?" As Michael was wreaking havoc among the crows, Michael saw a volley of golden arrows striking down the crows. He turned around and saw Gaia in the air with her bow. "What the hell is that?" Gaia asked, pointing at the shadow monster on the ground. The monster tried to fly toward Michael, but Rowena sent a stream of cold flames, interrupting its movements. The cold flames froze the glass wraiths in the 5-meter radius and shattered them to pieces. As Rowena expected, the broken glass pieces merged together and returned to life. "That's the curse," said Michael while shooting down the crows. "This is not time for explanation. Kill as many beasts as you can," Michael ordered Gaia. With her by his side, he could earn double the experience. Finally, Michael received a golden opportunity to strengthen himself. If everything went according to his new plan, he would be at Immortal stage level 8 by the time this battle ends. Chapter 873. Temporarily reaching half-celestial stage. In the previous chapter, I made a mistake by writing the shadow monster is at the celestial stage. It should have been half-celestial stage. I edited the chapters and changed them to half-celestial stage. Sorry for this grave mistake. Here is the cultivation stages again. Do not worry about these instructions as I updated the chapter first and then wrote all this. So only the chapter word counts. Not these comments. Arch sensing stage foundation stage body refining stage body strengthening stage core formation stage core strengthening stage soul refining stage fusion stage half immortal half celestial While Michael and Gaia were striking down the crows in the sky, Rowena headed straight to the shadow monster. Seeing Rowena, a half immortal, surviving a battle with a half celestial being really surprised Gaia. Although the shadow monster was at the half-celestial stage, something felt off about the monster to Gaia. She felt it was not a true half-celestial. Otherwise, Rowena would have been a red mush by now. There was no chance for a half-immortal even to survive a second in front of a half-celestial unless the celestial wasn't at its peak power. Since Gaia knew more about the celestials than Michael, she didn't think Rowena survived the monster because she was strong. On the contrary, Gaia thought the shadow monster was weak for a half-celestial. One reason why the shadow monster seemed weak in her eyes was the lack of physical body. A celestial being could not unleash their full power without a physical body. Celestials often existed in the ethereal form if something was to happen to their physical bodies. For instance, if another celestial being or an immortal managed to kill the celestial being somehow, their souls would escape the body and exist outside until it could find another vessel. While they were in the soul form, they would be at their weakest. Thus, Rowena was able to fight the shadow monster at the half-celestial stage. Many celestials would go to hell and heaven to create another physical body for themselves in case something was to happen to their current one. However, creating another physical body suitable for their soul was not as easy as one would expect. Plus, the shadow monster didn't have many offensive attacks to end the battle quickly. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a core formation level 4 crow. The reward is 100,000 experience points and 4,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 7,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a core formation level 7 crow. The reward is 100,000 experience points and 4,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 8,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a core strengthening stage level 5 crow. The reward is 200,000 experience points and 8,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 9,000 badass points. Michael willed the system to be quiet as the system blew his mind with notifications. The black bolts of lightning from Michael's dark swords riddled the skies and charcoaled countless crows. Despite the number of monsters around him, Michael restrained himself from using the ultimate ignitia. He wanted to use the ultimate spells on the shadow monster after Rowena froze it as planned. Speaking of the plan, Rowena was on the ground fighting the glass wraiths around the shadow monster. She had to fight off these beasts to reach the shadow monster, which remained on the ground, firing dark spikes at Michael. Several glass wraiths screamed and surrounded Rowena, only to get smashed by her. She threw the blades and swirled like a tornado, destroying every glass wraith around her. She destroyed them as soon as they revived themselves. After swinging the blades for a few moments, Rowena pulled the chains towards her, grabbed the blades by their hands, and stabbed the ground with enough force to create a powerful shock wave. The shock wave mixed with the cold flames sent a chilling frost wave that froze everything around Rowena. Then with another stab to the ground, Rowena sent another shock wave, shattering everything frozen. When Rowena cleared out the 20 or so glass wraiths with a single attack, the shadow monster finally turned its focus on Rowena. Seeing the glowing eyes fall on her, Rowena prepared herself to attack the monster head-on. However, when she took a step forward, the shadow monster roared. The next moment, Rowena went flying away from the monster like a rag doll. She coughed up mouth full of blood in midair as every organ in her body screamed in excruciating pain. Michael and Gaia were occupied with the monsters as they failed to catch Rowena. A few moments later, Rowena hit the ground and went sliding through the ground. Her sky-blue robes were torn and had holes in several places. When she picked herself from the ground, her hand looked crooked. The bone in her hand was sticking out through her skin. Just the look of this bloody sight would make a typical man squirm. But Rowena grabbed her broken bone and pushed it inside, gritting her teeth to fight the pain. The shadow monster didn't plan to give Rowena any time to retaliate. Instead, it flew straight toward Rowena, its eyes burning with pure killing intent. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal stage level 6. Just as the monster was moving toward Rowena, Michael leveled up. As a result, his full power reached the Immortal stage level 10 due to the death range. Even though it's just one level, it boosted his power to the point he appeared before Rowena in a blink of an eye. The shadow monster created a giant fist out of thin air, bringing it down upon Rowena. Luckily for her, Michael was just in time to block the fist with his black shield. Boom! Upon the fist hitting the black shield, a thunderous explosion sounded throughout the area. The ground beneath Michael's feet cracked as the punch pushed Michael down. Michael gritted his teeth, struggling to keep the shield between himself and the monster. At that moment, the black shield was the only thing that safeguarded Rowena from getting crushed to death. Now! Michael shouted at Rowena. She didn't need Michael to tell her twice as she summoned the cold flames to freeze the shadow monster. Meanwhile, Gaia fired arrow after arrow quickly enough to mimic firing several arrows simultaneously. She flew around the shadow monster and kept the other monsters of the fire realm at bay. The moment Rowena summoned the cold flames, Michael felt an intense chill as he saw the icy blue flames dancing upon Rowena's hand. Ignoring the pain in her born hand, Rowena raised her other hand, firing a stream of cold flames at the shadow monster. As soon as the stream of cold flames hit the monster, It roared and exerted more force to bury Michael in the ground. Michael's knees were on the verge of shattering, but he remained firm, resisting the shadow monster's force with brute strength. Thanks to Gaia striking down more and more beasts, Michael grew stronger. Rowena sensed the aura around Michael getting stronger with each falling beast, yet she was too focused on freezing the monster instead of focusing on Michael. Rowena's cold flames momentarily stopped the monster from making another move. Michael utilized the opportunity by casting the ring of fire. Immediately Rowena felt the temperature taking a turn as she felt the intense heat all around her. The cloud of darkness shrouding him grew darker and stronger as the dark flames burnt everything to the ground. Even the glass wraiths could not revive themselves as the flames evaporated their body and soul. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Stage Level 7. The moment Michael stepped into Level 7 of the Immortal Stage, the death range boosted his power 4 levels higher and made him a half-celestial. His strength skyrocketed through the roof as Rowena felt the sudden explosion in his aura. With his new power, Michael slowly pushed the shadow monster's hand away and punched the frozen area in the monster's core. Michael's punch sent the monster flying. It couldn't stop for a mile. Sensing the power radiation from him, the glass wraiths and the crows halted their advancement. Their eyes glistened with fear. When Michael took a step forward, they all stepped backward. Rowena was startled by how powerful he looked at that moment. One moment he struggled with the monster, and the next he sent it flying with a single punch. Suddenly, countless clusters of dark clouds appeared in the sky out of nowhere. They rumbled as purple lightning streaks struck across the sky. Rowena looked up at the dark clouds and sensed the overwhelming murderous aura from the Dark Lord. He slowly raised his arms to the sky and brought them down as hundreds of lightning bolts struck the ground at the same time. The sight immediately reminded Rowena of the time he ended the lives of hundreds of soldiers in Ithilien almost a year ago. Her neck hair stood up due to the electricity in the air. The lightning bolts crackled everywhere she looked, burning the beasts to a crisp. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Stage Level 8. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Stage Level 9. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 15,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 25,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 12,000 badass points. The amount of experience points Michael got exceeded his expectations. Furthermore, he only needed 50,000 badass points to pay his debt to the system. Initially, he thought killing all the beasts would get him to Immortal Stage Level 8, but he killed enough with his ultimate Ignitia to reach Level 9. He decimated all the glass wraiths and flocks of crows in a 1-mile radius. Rowena had never underestimated him. However, at that moment, she realized how powerful he truly was. When the darkness around him and the dark clouds in the sky faded away, Rowena saw the piles of ashes around her. No wonder the whole world feared him, she thought. After Michael eradicated the beasts, the shadow monster turned out to be alone. "I will distract it, and you freeze it with the cold flames," said Michael calmly as though nothing had happened. Now that he reached Level 9, he could reach the half-celestial stage with the use of the death range. In other words, he closed the power gap between him and the shadow monster. Chapter 874. Sudden departure of Rowena. After Michael cleared out the beasts of Fire Realm, Gaia landed beside him. Rowena quickly emptied a bottle of healing potion of her own before Michael could give her a blood tonic. Her hand was completely drenched in blood. Thanks to the healing potion, the scars, bruises, and the wound on her shoulder quickly healed as the rosiness to her face slowly returned. The trio waited for the shadow monster to approach them instead of rushing toward it. While the shadow monster was on its way to Michael, he noticed a bright light on the horizon behind the monster. The entire sky above the horizon slowly grew brighter and brighter to the point Gaia had to cover her eyes. "He started his tribulation," said Rowena. Michael didn't give a damn about Noah's tribulation. Instead, he was focused on killing the shadow monster. It would finally give him enough experience points to trigger his own tribulation to reach the half-celestial stage. Of course, he had to upgrade his system before triggering the tribulation, but once he had reached level 10 of the immortal stage, he would have the power of half-celestial stage without reaching the stage whenever he took his complete form. He always had a feeling Ethan's curse was a blessing in disguise. But deep down, one question kept nagging Michael: who actually cursed Ethan? The curse was powerful enough to possess sentience as well as the ability to teleport them from one realm to another. He wondered what kind of powerful being was able to create such a monstrosity. Interrogating the shadow monster was out of the question, and Michael had too many things on his plate to track down the curse's origin. Now that Sadie turned Noah's elites into one of their spies, Michael would be able to know everything Noah learns. Michael doubted Noah would let go of the man who cursed his father. Despite Noah's rule against killing, Michael saw the killing intent in his eyes. He saw the old Noah who slaughtered arrogant young masters and their families without remorse. Do we still need Noah's aid in defeating the monster? Rowena asked Michael. Judging by the overwhelming power radiation coming from Michael, she didn't think they needed Noah. Once she could freeze the monster, she knew he would take care of the monster all by himself. Unfortunately, freezing the monster was not as easy as it sounded. Just like I said, I distract the monster. You freeze it, Michael reminded Rowena again. She nodded and clenched the blades tighter. The icy blue cold flames danced around Rowena's blades, taking the form of small coiling dragons. This was the first time Michael had seen these flames take such form. Looking at them made him wonder if his dark flames could take shapes or forms. Dark Lord. The shadow monster suddenly roared, uttering Michael's name. Its thunderous roar shook the entire fire realm and caused several volcanoes to explode. Michael himself was completely stunned by the monster's roar. From the moment he laid his eyes on the monster, he felt like the monster had deep hatred toward him. Now the roar confirmed his suspicion. The shadow monster definitely had it for him. However, the thought that a god was behind everything never came across his mind. That's new. I think you pissed the ugly off by taking it out of its host, said Gaia. The more it focuses on me, the easier it will be for you to freeze it, Michael said to Rowena. He didn't worry about the shadow monster anymore. In fact, he was excited to finish it off. By reaching the half-celestial stage, he could finally start taking down the great 8 clans one by one. The era of the Dark Lord was about to begin. Letting out another roar, the shadow monster dashed toward Michael. Once it was just 10 meters away from Michael, Gaia leaped into the air and knocked a golden arrow into her bow. On the other hand, Rowena prepared herself to join the fight against the monster with Michael. It was not a battle of wits or strategies. Rather, this was a battle of rage and power. Not the smartest, but the strongest would survive. Keep your distance from it at all times, Michael warned Gaia as she nodded. Just as Michael planned, he dashed at the monster, and on his way, he opened his arms as the dark swords flew straight into his arms. Rowena thought he was about to use the swords. However, he just unsheathed the swords and leaped into the air. In mid-air, he flicked his wrist as the Doombringer materialized in his hand. Rowena raised her blades, sending the frost dragons toward the monster. At the same time, Michael clenched the Doombringer tighter as the ancient ice core imbued with the warhammer fired a stream of bone-chilling ice upon the monster from above. Rowena didn't expect Ghost to possess such a weapon. He always fought using swords, and seeing him use the warhammer felt odd. The monster's top, where the ice stream from the Doombringer hit, got covered in a thin layer of ice. But the ice layer was not strong enough to freeze the monster as it shattered in a blink of an eye. A couple of things happened at once. 1. Michael flew above the monster, trying to freeze it with the Doombringer's frost. 2. He evaded the shadow monster's dark spikes. 3. Rowena ran around the monster while it was focused on Michael and fired a constant stream of cold flames. Just looking at the monster's ethereal body told Gaia that she could be no help to Michael. So instead of being in harm's way, she flew away from the monster. She gained enough altitude to watch the entire battlefield. If there was a glass wraith or a crow who tried to intervene, it was her task to take them down. As Michael was battling the monster, the light rays on the horizon lost their glimmer. She would be lying if she said the thought of messing with Noah's heavenly tribulation didn't come across her mind. Since Michael gave her no order to do such a thing, she restrained herself from flying to Noah's tribulation and interrupting it. The shadow monster managed to attack Rowena using its ethereal fist, except Michael interrupted the attack with the black shield. Gaia noticed the cold flames slowly creating a layer of ice around the monster's center. As a result, the monster gradually became slow and vulnerable for Michael to attack. Rowena expected Michael to attack the monster's belly, but he chose not to. She threw him a doubtful glare. "Not the right time," said Michael. The battle between them lasted for almost 3 hours. Gaia watched Rowena almost die a couple of times, and if it wasn't for Michael's intervention, she would have been in big trouble. But that didn't surprise Gaia. What surprised her was how Michael and Rowena fought the shadow monster. They fought with such precision and coordination as they trained together for decades. They understood each other in the heat of the battle without words. Michael's power grew stronger as the fire realm turned darker. Finally, after 3 hours of intense battle, half of the shadow monster's body was frozen by the cold flames. "Dark Lord!" The monster roared once again as Michael landed right in front of it. For a moment, Michael locked his gaze with the monster's glowing red eyes. The monster fired dark spikes at him as he slowly made his way to the monster. He blocked the dark spikes with the black shield and clenched the Doombringer tighter with the other hand. Rowena breathed heavily and stood back, regaining her strength. After the long 3 hours of battle, she was exhausted. Using cold flames continuously took a toll on her body. Her legs shivered and begged her to give up. When Michael reached just an arm's reach from the monster, he retracted the shield into the space ring, held the Doombringer with both his hands, and swung it with all his might. Boom! The Doombringer hit the shadow monster and shattered the frozen core of the monster. Gaia saw a hole in the monster's body as it roared in pain. Gaia closed her ears due to the intensity of the roar. To their surprise, the monster grew smaller in size and weakened. It went from half-celestial stage level 3 to level 2. But before they could rejoice, the hole in the monster's body closed itself. "You gotta be kidding me," Rowena muttered with fury. After witnessing the monster heal itself, Michael immediately leaped away from it. As much as he would like to have another way of defeating the monster, there was none. The only way they had was to shatter its core until it could no longer heal itself, just like the glass wraiths. Meanwhile, Gaia noticed a couple of glass wraiths on the horizon, along with a flock of giant crows. She had to fly away from Michael to hunt them down before they could intervene in the battle. Noah could have used the heavenly flames to attack the monster's frozen core if he was also there with them. In that case, the shadow monster would have grown smaller and weaker. Michael didn't have a clue how long Noah's heavenly tribulation would be, but he didn't think it was a good idea to rely on Noah. He preferred to take down the shadow monster by himself with only Rowena's help. That way, he could earn more badass points and deal the last death blow to the monster. The last thing Michael needed was Noah to steal his experience points. After Michael landed beside Rowena, the shadow monster remained still for a moment as though it was thinking something. "Heal yourself. The battle is a long way from over," said Michael. "Where is that old woman, by the way? If we were teleported, there is a good chance everyone in the hall was too." Only then did the sudden realization hit Rowena. Her mother was standing in the hall with them. If they were all teleported, her mother would have ended up in the fire realm somewhere. Just the thought of her mother wandering in the life-ending realm shook Rowena to the core. "I have to find my mother," said Rowena. She didn't even bother to wait for Michael's response as Rowena flew away from Michael at lightning speed. The system did not see that coming, the system sarcastically said. Chapter 875. End of the long battle. After Rowena left the area to search for her mother, Michael, and Gaia was left with the shadow monster alone. Michael wasn't afraid of being alone. On the contrary, he felt relieved to fight the monster alone. Granted, freezing the monster with the Doombringer would take way longer than with the cold flames, but he could comfortably land the last strike on the monster in the end. Suppose Rowena or Noah was here, and their strikes took down the monster. All of his experience points would go down the drain. Michael needed those points to reach the half-celestial stage. "Keep those beasts off my back," Michael said, looking at Gaia in the air. As he prepared for the battle, the shadow monster dashed at him. This time, the shadow monster seemed really pissed off at him. The monster's eyes glowed brighter than before with intense hatred and rage. Two fists materialized over the monster's head and moved at high speed toward Michael. Michael's cat-like reflex made him raise the black shield and block both the shadow hands. The ground around him cracked open due to sheer force as Michael held off the monster's hands with his black shield. The shadow monster kept one hand on the shield and tried to punch him with the other. Michael quickly hit the ground with the Doombringer, creating an ice wall between him and the fist. The fist shattered the wall and sent Michael flying backward. However, Michael comfortably landed on his feet and cracked his neck. He was totally unharmed by the shadow monster's attack. Now that Michael had fought the monster for 4 hours, he had a pretty good idea about the monster's capabilities. As a result, he calculated the monster's moves and avoided its attacks without breaking a sweat. Of course, the monster seldom came up with new attacks and made Michael spill some blood. But overall, Michael had the upper hand in the battle. Despite everything, Michael knew he couldn't go on longer with the battle. Even the Dark Lord had his limits and eventually would grow exhausted. Hence, Michael poured all his energy into the Doombringer and fired a constant stream of bone-chilling ice at the shadow monster. Once he cast the lightning dash, Michael almost turned invisible. He ran around the monster, trying to freeze it. Although the ancient ice core could freeze a core formation cultivator to death in a minute, it couldn't hold a torch to the cold flames. Compared to the ancient ice core, the cold flames could freeze one in a second. The power gap between the ice core and the cold flames was huge. Simply put, Michael knew he had to spend days if Rowena hadn't returned to the monster and helped him with the cold flames. An entire day passed as Michael spent his time battling the shadow monster all this time. It took him an entire day to freeze the shadow monster's core with the Doombringer. Once he had completely frozen the center, he covered his fist with the dark flames and punched the monster, shattering its core yet again. The monster roared with the large hole in its shadowy body. As a result, its cultivation power dropped from half-celestial level 2 to level 1. After 2 more days, Michael finally managed to bring the shadow monster to the immortal stage. Thanks to all the potions and pills, Michael continuously fought the monster for 3 days. Meanwhile, Noah was facing his heavenly tribulation on the other side of the fire realm. Now that the shadow monster had become immortal, Michael easily avoided all its attacks. However, it took him longer than he liked to freeze the damn thing. Luckily, Rowena returned to him when the sun rose in the horizon. "You found your mother?" Michael asked Rowena. "Yes," Rowena nodded. "Sorry for leaving you all of a sudden," Rowena apologized to Michael. Normally, Rowena wouldn't apologize to anyone except to her family members. But she broke that rule and said sorry to Michael without realizing he was not her family. Michael just shrugged it off and raised his Doombringer, sending a steam of bone-chilling ice. Rowena joined him this time as the cold flames merged with the steam of ice. Even from afar, Gaia felt the sudden chilliness in the air. She could even see her own breath before her eyes. The ice from the cold flames and the ancient ice core rapidly formed a layer of ice in the monster. Michael and Rowena slowly moved forward as the monster was pushed backward. It screamed and roared, slowly getting frozen in its core. "Remember, it's my kill," Michael warned Rowena. She wasn't going to argue with him as she knew he deserved to land the final killing blow. After all, he was the one who had been fighting the shadow monster for days. Once, the shadow monster's core turned into a crystal which Michael punched with enough force to shatter completely. As the battle continued, Michael and Rowena repeated the same process of freezing its core and shattering it with brute force. Eventually, Michael and Rowena managed to freeze the shadow monster's entire body. Since the sun had fallen down, the darkness enveloped the world. As a result, Michael was at his peak power. Looking at the fragile monster, he knew it would only take one more punch to kill the monster once and for all. Gaia watched Michael walking toward the monster with the dark flames coiling around his fist excitedly. Dark. Lord. The shadow monster muttered. Its voice turned into a whisper as it stuck within bone-chilling ice. Ignoring the monster's words, Michael punched the monster as fast as he could. He didn't want Noah to appear out of thin air and end the monster's life. If that happened, Michael would definitely lose his calm and go berserk on Noah's entire family. Luckily for Noah, he was still facing his heavenly tribulation. Finally, Michael punched the shadow monster, shattering its entire body. As soon as the shadow monster flew into countless glassy shards, Michael felt an intense surge of power within him. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a half-celestial level 3 cursed shadow monster. The reward is 5 million experience points and 100,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 60,000 badass points. The system has stored the experience points needed to reach the half-celestial stage in the storage and will keep them until the host upgrades the system to version 9.0. Congratulations to the host for killing a half-celestial being for the first time. As a reward, the system has gifted the host with a legendary gift box. The system filled Michael's vision and head with the system notifications. Michael felt the excitement coursing through his veins when he received a legendary gift box. Whenever he received a legendary gift box, it boosted his power to another level. Thus, he couldn't wait to get alone and open the box. But first, he needed to deal with Rowena. "We did it," Gaia said, landing beside Michael. "We held up our bargain, holy maiden. We lifted the curse off your father. When you return to him, hell be good as new," said Michael. "I know you agreed to do it because of what I did back in Mazeroth. But by saving my father, you saved my family. I will not forget this," said Rowena. Michael didn't say anything for a moment. He slowly turned around and looked in the direction of Hell City. "If you ever feel like you have to do something for me in return, pay close attention to what Skyhall does behind your back. I am not the real villain as your brother and his guild believe," Michael warned Rowena as he slowly ascended into the air. "They should back off while I still have my patience. Once I crossed that line dash," Michael didn't finish his sentence. Instead, he let Rowena fill in the rest. As he reached higher and higher, Rowena saw the sky and the area around turn pitch black. The dark flames shrouded his body, raising the temperature in the air. He shocked Rowena with his power. At that moment, Rowena felt power radiations several times stronger than the shadow monster from him. The stormy clouds gathered above him and rumbled. When she looked at Michael, Rowena saw the lightning streaks in the dark sky. They felt like an ominous warning for whoever intended to cross his path. To be honest, Rowena had never felt such intense power. "We will meet again," said Rowena. Michael looked at her without uttering a word before disappearing into the dark clouds. The darkness gradually faded away after he left the area. After he disappeared, Rowena looked in the direction of bright light rays and flew straight toward them. While Rowena was on her way to Noah's tribulation, Michael headed straight to Hell City. One would expect him to be happy. But on the contrary, he had a frown on his face. Even Gaia didn't know what just happened that wiped off the smile she just saw a few seconds ago. Without uttering a word, he just headed straight to Hell City for some reason. The city was located on the other side of the realm and far from where Michael defeated the shadow monster. "What's going on?" Gaia asked the questions countless times, but Michael remained silent. Only when Gaia saw the outskirts of Hell City did Gaia realize why Michael headed straight here. She heard a powerful humming in the air followed by a crisp ding like someone had plucked a Vina string. "Is that Angel's Vina?" Gaia couldn't help questioning herself. There was nothing except Angel's Vina could have created such a powerful buzz in the air. Gaia could feel the violent energy fluctuations around her. The closer they got to Hell City, the louder the buzz sounded. If that wasn't enough, Gaia vaguely saw a figure floating above Hell City, covered in an emerald green light. "I am sick of chasing you around, bitch." Gaia heard a thunderous roar echoing through the fire realm. "You are coming with me, dead or alive." The angry guy shouted, loud enough to cause tremors in the ground. In his fury, he failed to notice the sky turning darker. Anger blinded him from seeing his death coming in the form of the Dark Lord. Chapter 876. The Dark Lord's promise to Layla Alden DBS and Esses will be resumed from 20th this month, and Roll 2 will be updated from April 1 **** somewhere in the realm of sea folks. A couple of figures roamed around in a dungeon-like room with bluish lamps and chairs. This dungeon extended partway under the ocean, giving the light in the room a blue tinge. The room had lots of low-backed black and dark blue leather sofas, skeletons of giant fish, and dark wood cupboards. One of the wooden tables had a bowl filled with blood on it. The room had quite a grand atmosphere, but also quite a cold one. One of the heads of House Gladrath sat before the glass window and glanced at the bustling city before him. This underwater city made any city on the land pale in comparison. Hundreds or even thousands of buildings built with glass and lit with luminescent mushrooms gave the entire city a grand appearance. From afar, one could see the sparkling dome around the city, keeping the ocean water from flooding. Not that the sea folk couldn't breathe underwater, but many buildings could not withstand such pressure. They would shatter into pieces if the dome didn't exist. After all, the city was located at the bottom of the ocean. One who wasn't a sea folk would not survive the ocean's pressure despite their cultivation level. Only a higher up in the sea folk hierarchy could bring outsider to the city, and even then, the visitor must be at least a fusion stage cultivator. Otherwise, the sheer pressure would crush their organs to a pulp, turning them into a bloody mess. "We might get some backlash if the landwalkers heard of our recent actions, Gruzel," said a man with large eyes, fish-like mouth, and hands with thin skin between fingers, which enabled the seal folk to move through the ocean swiftly. "What do you think they would do?" "Weak doesn't fight back, Gleeless," said Gruzel. Gruzel was one of the sea folk kind who had the head and upper body of an elf and the tail of a fish. Their bodies were built to swim through the ocean faster than any kind, and while they were in spaces without water, they would float above the ground. Those who broke through the core strengthening stage could transform their tails into legs and grow wings to fly. However, the proud and traditional members chose not to, as they thought transforming their bodies was a sin. Gruzel's kind was called the Mermans, one of the ancient races in the sea folk realm. Currently, Gruzel and Gleeless were plotting against the House of Halrid. The sea folk race had 3 superpowers among them. 2 were part of the Great 8 clans. The 2 great clans were the Water God Hall and Sea Serpent Hall. Although Arctic Hall was a powerful clan, it wasn't a Great 8 clan. It didn't become a Great 8 clan mainly because it was divided into 3 houses: the House of Halrid, the House of Gladrath, and the House of Bigmag. Mutrad, the recent subordinate of Michael, hailed from the House of Halrid. The higher-up in the Arctic Hall ordered him to apprehend the Dark Lord. But due to the internal conflict within the 3 houses, catching the Dark Lord went down on their priority list. The main reason for this conflict was House Gladrath's hatred toward House Halrid and their hunger for power. The 2 houses always hated each other and had tension between them. Thanks to Gruzel's recent discovery, he found a way to gain the upper hand over the House of Halrid as well as the House of Bigmag. Unfortunately, his discovery required someone's blood, the blood of a spirit child. "Would you please relax, Gleeless?" Looking at the worried look on Gleeless' face, Gruzel reassured him with a carefree smile. "I have my doubts about Eratos. He is not right in the head, and you know it. Besides, he is a human. How can we trust a human with a pivotal task such as this, Gruzel?" Gleeless questioned Gruzel. "He is a human. That's exactly why I sent him instead of one of ours. But don't forget Eratos' history with the child's mother. The rage within him drives him to do whatever is necessary," said Gruzel. "You are yet to tell me why you ordered him to bring the mother instead of the child," Gleeless asked Gruzel. Gruzel let out a foxy smile before flicking his wrist. A silver platter holding 2 glasses and a bottle of wine hovered toward them. Gruzel picked up the bottle and poured the wine into the glasses. Then, he handed one glass to Gleelis and floated to the window. His friend followed him behind and joined him, looking through the window. So, Gleelis tilted his head to the sight. I sent someone the child trusts like its family to bring it here. Eratos just had to ensure there were no loose ends. Gruzel shocked Gleelis. Did you really think I would trust Eratos with the child? Everyone knows he is not right in the head. It made him the perfect person to deal with the child's mother, but when it comes to the spirit child, I won't let him near it anywhere, said Gruzel. Gruzel took a long sip of wine and looked at the children swimming around his citadel. Some of the children waved at him as he waved back. On the outside, no one would expect Gruzel to be so cruel. In reality, Gruzel was one of the most dangerous and evil men in the entire sea folk realm. Unfortunately, an innocent spirit child ended up in his target circle. What about Mutrad, Gruzel? Is he anywhere close to catching him? What if he learns about all this? We cannot let him step into our world. Gleelis' eyes glimmered with fear as he uttered these words. The child and the mother are not in the mortal realm. One is in the fire realm and the other in the Akilun realm. Gleelis heaved a sigh of relief after hearing Gruzel. The last time he heard, the one he feared the most was in the mortal realm. Gleelis was one of the few who were terrified of the prophecy and the stories behind that man. Many, like Gruzel, never believed in those stories and prophecies. Instead, they believed he was just a man who could be killed if the push came to a shove. Like I always say, Gleelis, we don't have to fear him even if he comes into our world. He is just a mortal who bleeds. And if he bleeds, we can kill him, Gruzel snickered. I know you don't believe in the prophecies. But all I am telling you is, do not underestimate him. Why are we suddenly talking about the Dark Lord? Gruzel rolled his eyes. He abandoned his child and its mother a long time ago. Except for us and probably the Supreme Guardian, no one knew the Dark Lord had a spirit child with Layla Alden. Contrary to what everyone says, I think that human is incompetent to be the Supreme Guardian. Why else he left the mother and child alone instead of taking them into custody? Gruzel took another sip of wine and continued questioning Gleelis. Unlike Gruzel's thought, Noah left Layla and the spirit child alone, knowing they could do nothing to help him catch the Dark Lord. Furthermore, Noah didn't want the child to be branded as the Dark Spawn and live his life like the enemy of the world. Instead, Noah wanted the child to have a normal childhood and life as he had. But despite Noah's all good-hearted thoughts, he made the mistake of removing the spider from the spirit child's neck. He intended to erase all the Dark Lord's influence on the child, including the spying contraption. By destroying the spider, Noah secluded the child from everyone else, including the Dark Lord. Since he removed the spider and assigned guardians to monitor Rainbow Island, Azazel could not keep an eye on Harry. When Azazel reported losing the feed to Harry and Layla to Michael, he told Azazel to leave them alone. Michael ensured no one except Noah knew about the spirit child. At first, Michael wanted to sneak into a Rainbow Island, rig the place with spiders and continue to keep Layla and Harry in surveillance. In fact, he managed to sneak past the Guardians and reached Layla. But when Layla met Michael, her eyes blazed with fear. She didn't even let Harry see Michael's face. When Michael approached her, she asked him to leave them alone for the sake of Harry's safety and made him promise he wouldn't interfere with Harry's life as Michael initially told her. To be honest, Michael didn't blame Layla for thinking they were better off without him because that was true. That day before he left for Gondolin, Michael cut all his connections with Layla and left them alone. So one could only imagine how pissed off the Dark Lord would be when he learns the plot against Layla and Harry. Maybe he didn't want to piss off the Dark Lord, Gleelis muttered. Don't be a spineless coward, Gleelis. Once we use the spirit child's blood to locate the artifacts, we will be strong enough to become a great 8 clan. This is our ancestors' plan, and we will not fail them, Gruzel firmly said. His eyes were filled with confidence and resolve. No matter what happened or who stood in his way, Gruzel would never back off from his plan. He had been working too hard for too long to abandon everything because of some children's stories about the God of Darkness. As Gruzel was discussing his plans with his best friend, he heard a voice in his head. My lord, Aratos has located Layla Alden in the Fire Realm. He is on his way to apprehend her. Gruzel heard the voice of his subordinate. These words put a bright smile on Gruzel's face. Aratos found Layla, gleeless. Gruzel told his friend with a smile. Gleeless couldn't help feeling excitement coursing through his veins. If Gruzel successfully completed the ritual, there would be nothing to stop them from becoming a great 8 clan. He just hoped the Dark Lord would be in the dark, knowing nothing about the disappearance of the spirit child and its mother. But little did he know the Dark Lord was on his way to Aratos with a god's vengeance. Chapter 877, Layla Alden, Please Marry Me. A long time ago, when the sun slowly peeped over the Rainbow Island, birds shook the morning dew off their feathers and gave a cheerful song that would lift even the most sorrowful spirits. A light mist wrapped around the lone mountain where Layla resided, reaching to touch every bit of life thriving there. The slight chill in the air was enough to give a gentle shiver, but not enough for the need for a fire. A breeze tickled the trees, making their leaves shake and sway with laughter. Golden sunlight slowly seeped in past the thick canopy of branches with hopes of being able to reach the damp mountain earth. The heaven-touching apex of the mountain was drenched in brilliant light. Inside the cave at the top of the mountain, Layla was cultivating in silence. She canceled all the sounds of birds singing, slowly breeze rustling the trees, and the distant shouts of the natives. While Layla was cultivating, her disciples Johanna, Narita, and Megan focused on cleaning the cave and their Venus. Despite their young age, these 3 little girls moved swiftly through the cave and cleaned the place. After they put some fragrant incense sticks around, they came in front of Layla, bent down, and touched Layla's feet to get her blessings. Layla was everything to the 3 girls. They were with Layla as her disciples for as long as they could remember. With Layla around, the girls never felt like orphans. Under Layla's tutelage, they reached the body-refining stage at such a young age. They weren't anything like prodigies or something, but Layla's guidance and the resources she provided made a difference in their cultivation speed. Just as the little girls were about to head out, they saw a shadow on the ground and looked at the cave mouth to see several people descending from the sky. The moment the girls saw these men, they trembled in fear. They quickly stepped closer to Megan, the red-haired girl with pretty freckles sprinkled on her face. Among them, Megan was the toughest and always had their back. When Layla wasn't around, Megan always went into the forest to hunt and hone her combat skills. Layla was yet to teach them how to defend themselves using Avena, but she didn't stop Megan from training with swords and bows. Since Layla was cultivating, Megan strolled out to meet these unwelcomed visitors. The group landed at the cave entrance with 4 guards armed to the teeth and 2 men dressed in fancy golden robes. One of them was a middle-aged man with a bushy beard, short dark hair with strands of white hair, and blue eyes. Meanwhile, the man standing next to the middle-aged man was a stunning young man with striking golden hair. He would make any young girl's heart skip a beat with his perfect jaw and clean-shaven face. The young man's hazel eyes glowed with life and excitement, as the most attractive feature about the young man was perhaps his slightly pointy ears he inherited from his elven father. But something crooked hid underneath all the handsome face and perfectly built body. Unlike the 3 girls, this young man was a prodigy. He reached the core strengthening stage at the age of 20 and was said to be the most desired man on the continent of Ar. Hundreds or even thousands of proposals were sent to the young man's home every single day, but he chose none because he had already lost his heart to the wielder of Angel Vena, Layla Alden. "Hello, girls," the middle-aged man greeted the 3 girls with obvious disdain in his eyes. He was born and raised as a rich noble. In his eyes, street urchins like these 3 girls were beyond disgusting, and just talking to them made him want to throw up. He still had a hard time coping with the fact that his daughter was raising these orphans on her own instead of marrying into one of the many noble families in Gondolin. Lord Nobert, Megan lowered her head and greeted her mentor's father with respect despite how she thought about him in her heart. To be honest, Megan would choose to be an orphan any day than be Nobert's daughter. He was an alcoholic, gambler, wastrel, and arrogant fool who hated everyone who wasn't noble by birth. Is she there? Nobert asked bluntly. Mistress is cultivating at the moment and ordered us to let no one inside, said Megan. Despite facing people who could kill her with a snap of their fingers, the brave little girl had no signs of fear in her eyes. Seeing the girl facing them without covering down made Nobert's blood boil. Every single cell in his body screamed at him to throw the little girl off the mountain. But he had to restrain himself, thinking about what Layla would do. The relationship between him and Layla was already broken, and preferred not to damage it any more than he had already. You can tell us her father is here to meet her, or I can meet her in person, Nobert creased his brows and said. He didn't sound like he was telling them but rather ordering them. However, Megan remained firm in not letting them through. Her mentor gave her an order, and Megan didn't plan to fail. I am afraid you cannot meet the mistress today. You can leave a message with us if you want, said Megan. The veins in Nobert's eyes popped, making his eyes red like a demon's. He could no longer take such disrespect from a street urchin like Megan. He immediately stepped forward with his hands raised in the air. You filthy rat, Megan's instincts kicked in as she raised her hand to defend herself. As Nobert's hand was about to slap Megan, a powerful melody resonated through the cave and pushed the group several steps back. One of the guards almost slipped off the edge and fell to his death. Narrated and Johanna heaved a sigh of relief as they saw Layla walk out of the cave gracefully. If a gaze could kill Nobert, his guards, and the youngster would have died almost instantly. Her cold and murderous gaze swept across the group, making the guards shudder in fear. They were strong but not as strong as Layla Alden, the wielder of Angel Vina. When Layla exited the cave, Johanna and Narita ran behind Layla and stood close to her. Meanwhile, Megan stood beside Layla as though she was Layla's loyal guard. You haven't changed a bit, Layla coldly said. I could say the same to you, said Nobert as the youngster stood there mesmerized by Layla's beauty. His eyes sparkled with his heartbeat rapidly rising. Anyone could tell the young man was madly in love with Layla. Unfortunately, the feeling wasn't mutual at all. Why are you here? Layla completely ignored the young man and coldly asked her father. Does a father need a reason to see his daughter? Nobert answered Layla's question with another question. We both know that doesn't apply to you, Layla snickered. For a few moments, Nobert didn't utter a single word. Silence fell over them. Megan felt extremely uncomfortable and furious when she noticed how the youngster was staring at her teacher. We should talk alone, Nobert said and threw a glance with disdain at Layla's disciples. Whatever you want to talk to me, you have 2 minutes, said Layla. Granted, Layla was not very talkative and friendly, but she seemed colder toward her father. If one had a good perception, they could see the anger and contempt in Layla's eyes. It was a clear indication of the hostility she had toward her father. Ever since Layla's mother died in a mysterious accident, Layla hated Nobert to the core. Although there was no evidence to prove it wasn't an accident, Layla had reasons to believe Nobert actually orchestrated her mother's death so he could marry another woman. Nobert pretended to have his heart broken by his first wife's death. Yet, he married another woman within a month and had a baby girl named Edith the next month. In other words, Nobert was with another woman while Layla's mother was still alive. Layla suspected that her mother found out Nobert was cheating on her, and when she confronted him, he killed her. As in the Alden family, there was a strict rule against marrying another woman when one's spouse was still alive. Furthermore, Layla had seen bruises and swelling in her mother's body. Layla didn't believe her mother's story about how she fell off the steps or fought with a boar when they went hunting. If Layla hadn't made a promise to her mother that she wouldn't hurt Nobert, he would have been 6 feet under the moment Layla suspected he was beating her mother. Nobert was really lucky that Layla hadn't broken the promise even after her mother died. Nobert gritted his teeth as Layla saw the glimpse of the beast hiding within him. She could tell he wanted to raise his hand and beat her, just like how she beat her mother. The only reason why he held back was unlike her mother, she wasn't weak. Very well, Nobert exhaled and looked her in the eyes. I gave my word to young Master Eratos here that I would marry you to him, As soon as these words escaped Nobert's mouth, Layla's anger exploded like a raging volcano. The murderous aura radiated from Layla made everyone tremble. She was shivering as her eyes turned blood red. The sheer guts it took her father to say this to her face. She was mad beyond limits. Nobert held his ground without showing any signs of fear. Layla, Eratos took a step forward with a gentle smile. She slowly turned her murderous gaze away from her father to Eratos. I have been in love with you since the moment I laid my eyes on you. You are the only woman who stole my heart, Layla. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Layla Alden, please marry me. Eratos dropped to one knee, flicked his wrist as a diamond ring appeared in his hand, and extended it toward Layla. You have 3 seconds to leave before I rip you all to shreds. Eratos and the others were stunned by Layla's words. The guards who accompanied Nobert actually expected Layla to accept Eratos' proposal because they saw no reason why she would reject it. They became speechless when they saw the pure anger and killing intent in her eyes. Chapter 878. True Form of the Angel's Vina. Layla gave Eratos and her father 3 seconds to leave the place unharmed. Surprisingly, none of them took a step backward as they weren't going to leave the mountain. When Layla counted to 3 in her mind, Narita shouted suddenly, "Teacher, behind!" Layla's instincts screamed at her as she leaped away from where she stood. A silver arrow with jade-green veins coiled around hit the ground. Layla landed comfortably on the ground and looked up at the mountain above the cave entrance to see a black-robed finger hanging on the mountain with a bow and arrow. When Layla thought Nobert couldn't stoop any lower, he surprised her. The assassin fired another arrow and another one at a rapid speed. Layla immediately raised her hand, casting a spell. Feathers of Angel. As soon as Layla cast the spell, pure white feathery wings materialized behind her and protected her from the arrows. Layla's speed caught Eratos off guard. In a blink of an eye, Layla ascended to the ground. In midair, a long vina appeared in her hand. When she struck a string, a powerful energy wave shot out from the vina, knocking down the assassin from the mountain. Before the assassin could hit the ground, Layla struck another chord which turned into a crescent moon-shaped blade and cut the core formation assassin in half. His body was cut into 2 halves as the assassin's entrails rained down through his hips along with blood. Nobert felt a chill running down his spine when he saw how easily Layla dealt with the assassin. Layla was completely pissed off by the ambush. Unfortunately, her anger blinded her mind and prevented her from realizing the assassin was just a distraction. When Layla landed on her feet, she couldn't find Eratos anymore. He just vanished into thin air until she felt a violent surge in energy around her. The mountain trembled as the arch energy surged to the sky and gathered above a golden glow. "Get inside!" Layla shouted at her disciples. She was too late to realize Eratos had finished casting a legendary spell. Although Eratos was a stage below Layla in terms of cultivation, a legendary spell would close the power gap between them. It was too late for her to stop the spell. The only thing she could do was move away from the spell's range. Meanwhile, Nobert and the guards behind him flew behind Eratos and watched Layla with arrogant looks on their faces. They deemed Layla deserved to be taught a lesson. Besides, Nobert had to resort to violence because of her. His world would turn into hell if he couldn't get Layla to marry Eratos. Before Nobert came to the Rainbow Islands, Nobert gambled with Eratos and lost the game in which he bet his daughter. He would have used Edith as a bet against Eratos, but the latter showed no interest in marrying a little girl. Eratos' love for Layla had turned into an obsession long before. So Eratos didn't suddenly snap as he always planned to take Layla by force if he couldn't get her to agree to marry her. Once Nobert finished casting the spell, a giant ethereal head of a dragon appeared behind Eratos. The dragon's head glowed in icy blue, and its roar shook the entire island. Layla thought of flying away, only to see the dragon's gaze fall on the cave entrance where her disciples stood there like statues in shock. Not that the 3 girls wanted to stay still and watch, but their bodies refused to move. The coldness permeating from the dragon petrified them due to their weak minds and bodies. Layla dashed at her disciples to shield them from the dragon. However, the moment she took a step toward the girls, the dragon opened its mouth, firing hundreds of ice spikes in a steady stream. Having no other choice, Layla summoned Angel's Vina. As soon as she summoned the Vina, everything around her stopped as though someone had pressed a pause button on the world. Slowly, with an otherworldly vibration, a pure white Vina with feathery wings attached to it appeared in the air before Layla. Each string glistened and whispered inside Layla's head to play them all. This was the true form of Angel's Vina, a sentient being that turned into a Vina by the gods and remained dormant until Layla touched it. Ever since she bonded with the Vina, it stayed with her, giving her supernatural abilities. Even after years of being with the Vina, Layla barely scratched the surface of its true powers. Once the Vina appeared before Layla, she gently struck a string, imagining a shield powerful enough to block the ice spikes. When she struck the string cut her finger and absorbed the blood. The strings glowed in red for a moment as Layla felt extremely tired. In its true form, the Angel's Vina consumed the user's life essence, aka the soul energy, to work. Hence, overusing the Vina would eventually lead the user to his or her death. It took great mental fortitude to resist using the Vina, and that was the main reason why Layla always stayed meditating inside her cave and seldom used the Vina in battles. Ding! The moment the string vibrated, a glowing dome appeared around Layla and the little girls. After the vibrating sound faded away, the Vina faded away. As a result, everything started to move once again. All the spikes shot out from the dragon's mouth and hit the dome, creating countless ripples in the dome, but none of them could pierce through it. The dragon roared louder and louder as the number of ice spikes increased rapidly, except the result remained the same. After a brief moment, the dragon finally vanished into thin air, leaving everyone speechless, especially Eratos. He couldn't believe his almighty legendary spell couldn't even scratch Layla, let alone knock her out. Once the dragon and the dome disappeared, Layla felt the immense toll the Vina took on her body and soul. She could barely stand still. "Teacher," Layla heard Johanna's voice as she turned around. "Megan." Layla's heart skipped a beat, seeing Megan's robes slowly turning red around her chest. The little girl had a hole in her chest. Megan's body froze from head to toe before her eyes, and Layla couldn't do anything. Unfortunately, the dragon spike penetrated Megan just a second before the dome appeared around them. Considering Megan was just at the body refining stage, the spike went through her chest, leaving the dragon's ice essence. It completely froze Megan from the inside out. "No." Layla shivered as she immediately took out a healing potion to heal Megan. Her eyes teared up as Layla tried to pour the potion into Megan's mouth. However, the little girl had already turned into an ice statue, and when the potion hit her mouth, Megan's body shattered into pieces. Everything around Layla froze. Layla's mind went completely blank as she stared at the icy shards slowly melting on the ground. As much as Nobert wanted the street urchin dead, he couldn't feel any joy. Instead, he realized they screwed up big time. Fear quickly clenched everyone's heart, and Eratos felt a chill running down his spine when he saw the vengeful eyes of Layla, which had no sentience but pure murderous lust. Without giving any time for Eratos to react, Layla summoned the Angel's Vina yet again. She knew using it twice in a day would put her cultivation speed several years behind, yet she couldn't care less. At that moment, she wanted Eratos dead more than anything in the world. This time, the Vina appeared without passing everything around it. Hence, everyone could clearly see the mass-destructive weapon. Layla struck the string, imagining Eratos dead. Just like before, her hands bled as she finally couldn't stand still anymore. After the Vina absorbed the blood, a powerful sonic wave shot straight toward Eratos. His instincts kicked in, making him quickly raise his hands to defend himself. But the invisible sonic wave broke his right hand to pieces. Eratos roared in agony as Nobert saw the young's body shrivel with blood oozing out of his shoulder where his hand was a moment ago. The young man's stunning handsome face lost all its glow and shine and turned into something hideous. All his hair crumbled down from his head as his body shrunk to the point he looked like he hadn't eaten for a year. However, the sound of his screams still reverberated through the islands with full of vigor. Nobert trembled hearing the scream. "Kill me!" Eratos roared, wishing for a quick death. As much as he wanted the pain to stop and embrace sweet death, the shark head medallion on his chest prevented death from taking Eratos' life. In her fury, Layla didn't notice the glowing medallion. Hence, when she saw Eraps fall down from the sky, she thought he had lost his life. After Eratos dropped from the air, she turned her gaze at Nobert and his guards. "You and I are done." Layla's murderous gaze swept across Nobert. "Go away before I break my promise to my mother," Layla growled. Nobert didn't dare to stay any longer as he could tell the murderous intent in her eyes was no joke. Nobert left the island without turning back. While flying away from the island, he heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. Since he thought Layla killed him, he thought the bet he had with Eratos was no longer valid. Unfortunately, Nobert found out the hard way that Eratos was rescued by the sea folks, and Eratos' family retaliated on the Aldens, slaughtering the strongest warriors in their house. Layla had to step in and save the rest with the Empress' help. After reducing them, Layla sent Edith and her mother to Thusia, where Edith befriended Victoria Barnes. Although Layla saved Edith and her mother, Edith blamed Layla for what had happened to Nobert and the Aldens. On that day, when Megan died in her arms, Layla thought she had avenged her by killing Eratos. Layla never thought she would meet Eratos almost after 18 years in the Fire Realm. Except for the canines, all his teeth were nowhere to be found in his mouth. Thus, he looked horrible when he laughed at Layla's state. Even a grown man would be scared to death by Eratos' appearance. Although the shark head medallion saved Eratos all those years ago, it actually made his life a living hell. Gruzel and his kind fanned Eratos' hatred ever since and turned him into a vile monster. Eratos were their secret weapon against their enemies. Whenever Gruzel wanted someone to be taken care of, Eratos would be his first choice. Everyone who died in Eratos' hands went through hell and wished for a quick death. He was brutal, inhumane, and insane. Even many in Gruzel's close circle were terrified of Eratos and advised Gruzel to put him down like a rabid dog. However, Gruzel saw a greater potential of a killing machine than anyone else. As Eratos was taunting Layla, thunderclouds rumbled in the distance. Soon, clusters of dark clouds appeared above them. In his rage mode, Eratos didn't mind the sudden change in his surroundings. As far as he was concerned, it was just a typical storm in the Fire Realm. Considering Eratos spent his time secluded from the outer world in the Sea Folk realm, he had no idea what was happening in the world. When Layla saw the sky getting darker and darker, she knew he was there. Eratos' evil grin froze once he noticed the strange smile on Layla's face. He couldn't think of a single reason for what could have made her smile unless she went insane. "I will wipe that pretty smile off your face, bitch," Eratos snickered. A silver chain riddled with nails materialized in Eratos' hand. He clenched the chain tight and swung it toward Layla. Layla's instincts screamed at her to raise her hands to defend herself. But her hands simply refused to move. Thus, she could only close his eyes. A few seconds passed, yet the chain was nowhere close to Layla. Eratos tried to yank the chain without turning around. To his surprise, the chains didn't even move an inch as it felt like the chain was frozen in the air. Finally, Eratos slowly turned around to see someone dressed in complete black holding the chain in his one hand. "Ghost," Layla mumbled as she saw the Dark Lord hovering in the air facing Eratos. The last time she saw him, he was only a half-immortal. And a year later, he became an immortal on the verge of breaking through to the half-celestial stage. She would be lying if he said she wasn't glad to see him, especially given her situation. Facing Michael, Eratos tried to yank the chains out of his hands. But no matter how hard he tried, the chains didn't even move an inch. Eratos felt an overwhelming power radiating from the black-robed youngster, and when he focused, he was stunned to see his superior cultivation stage. The evil grin on Eratos' face completely vanished into thin air. In its stead, A shocked expression appeared on his face. I hope you will have some answers for us, Gaia sighed. If choking and cutting Eratos was not enough, Michael fired the dark beams out of his eyes and burned 2 holes through Eratos' head. While brutally murdering Eratos, he noticed the glowing shark head medallion on Eratos' neck. Michael felt the medallion's energy trying to keep Eratos' soul from leaving his body. This medallion saved Eratos from the wrath of Angels Vina and kept him alive all these years. But Michael's power was far stronger than the magic within the medallion. He just grabbed it and pulled it from his neck against the medallion's resistance. Once Michael removed the medallion, it trembled violently for a moment in his hands before losing all its glow. When the dark sword reached the base of Eratos' neck, Michael twisted the sword and cut his head clean off his shoulders. Eratos' headless body fell down, swaying in the stormy wind. The dark beams melted down Eratos' head until nothing but a crumbling skull was left in his hand. Gradually, the darkness in the sky slowly faded away, revealing Michael in the air. Then, Michael slowly descended to the ground and landed before Layla. He didn't say a word to Layla but looked her in the eyes, expecting an explanation. At the current level, the host can cause and induce the same pain the victim has caused to others in his lifetime. The host has a 30% chance to bring down the victim's cultivation by 1 stage if the skill was used on the victim for more than 10 seconds. The higher the skill level is, the higher the chance of bringing down the victim's cultivation stage. The Soul Stare's ultimate form would enable the host to control the victim by looking into their eyes from afar. Like hypnotism? Michael asked the system. At its very core, but the Soul Stare is much more powerful and complex than hypnotism. Once the host upgrades it to higher levels and unlocks the ultimate form, you can turn your enemies against their allies without even lifting a finger. Just hearing the system describe the skill's power made Michael momentarily forget about Eratos and the hit on Layla and feel the excitement coursing through his veins. However, he knew a godly power like this would come up with a catch. When he thought about it, the system informed Michael about the limitations of the skill. The Soul Stare cannot mind control adversaries who possess powerful souls. The victim must have nothing to protect their eyes. For instance, if the victim was to wear glasses, the Soul Stare would not work. This can be overridden by completing certain tasks the system assigns the host. What kind of tasks? Asked Michael. That is for another time, host. The system did not reveal anything about the tasks to Michael. He remembered the system telling him he had to complete some special tasks to upgrade the spells and skills after a certain level. For now, he didn't have to worry about these tasks. Besides, Michael lacked the points to upgrade his skills and spells to that level. Now that Michael had earned another new skill, he exited the system. Then, he immediately contacted Azazel through the earpiece, hoping Azazel would tell him that the spirit child was fine with Narita and Johanna. My lord, Azazel answered Michael's call. The moment Michael heard Azazel's voice filled with rage and shock, Michael's heart skipped a beat. The spirit child is not here, my lord. I am sorry, said Azazel. Where are Narita and Johanna? Michael asked Azazel. Knocked out, my lord. Whoever took the child knocked them out before they could see his face, said Azazel. Michael had to take a few deep breaths to calm himself and never let the anger blind him. After being silent for a few moments, Michael asked Azazel about the guardians. What about the guardians? The same, my lord. They were knocked out the same way as the disciples of Lady Layla. After hearing that whoever took Harry was knocked out instead of killed, Michael was able to heave a sigh of relief. I don't see any signs of a struggle here, my lord. What would you want me to do, my lord? Kill those guardians and inform Noah that his people failed their duty, Michael coldly ordered Azazel. It didn't even take a few seconds for Michael to come up with this brutal order. As far as Michael was concerned, they deserved to be killed. It was their duty to protect the spirit child, and they utterly failed in their duty. If Michael was there, their deaths would have been much more painful. As you wish, my lord. I will do everything I can to find the spirit child. Now I have to break this news to Layla. I will meet you later in the castle, Hazel. Michael sighed, cutting the connection between them. Although Michael partly blamed Layla for the spirit child's disappearance, he also blamed himself. He felt stupid for listening to Layla and promising her he would no longer spy on them. When Michael finally turned around, Gaia immediately saw something was wrong by looking at the grim look on his face. He slowly floated toward Layla and took a deep breath. Layla! Someone has taken Harry. Those words hit Layla like a heavy hammer and made her mind go blank. She trembled from head to toe, unable to believe what she had just heard. Even Gaia was stunned by Michael, but she threw him an "I told you so" look. She nagged Michael to break his promise and continue to monitor the spirit child. However, Michael wanted them to have a normal life, completely cut off from him. Unfortunately, Michael learned his lesson the hard way. But Michael couldn't find a single person related to him who might want to take the spirit child. It felt like whoever took the child had nothing to do with him but with Layla. I have to go. Layla tried to fly away, only to get stopped by Michael. He grabbed her by the arm. There's nothing for you to do there. Harry is gone. Help me find whoever took him so I can bring him back safely. You've done enough, Ghost, Layla answered Michael with gritted teeth. Don't put the blame on him, Layla. He wasn't the one who made him get rid of all the safety measures in the first place. Gaia immediately came to Michael's defense as tears rolled out of Layla's eyes. She tried wriggling her hands out of Michael's grab, but he was too strong. I don't think my enemies took him away, Layla. Whoever took him is related to you, said Michael. Finally, Layla stopped resisting Michael in complete shock. It's not a coincidence that you were attacked, and Harry disappeared at the same time. Someone planned this. I am bringing him back with or without your help. And this time, I am doing this my way. Thunder rumbled in the distance while clusters of dark clouds appeared above them as a warning to whoever dared to kidnap Harry. They just made the last mistake of their life and ended up at the top of Michael's kill list. As the elf was staring at the headless body, a strong wave of wind flew past him, snuffing out the light. Hide as much as you want, coward, the elf started to growl. I am going to show you the true meaning of power, said the elf. Then, the elf flew out of the darkness and prepared to cast a powerful spell. He closed his eyes for a moment as a golden shield around him appeared to protect him while he cast the spell. From the ground, Gaia sensed the sudden surge in energy around her. In a blink of an eye, an ethereal cage appeared right above the dome of darkness. Thick chains glistening in the light grew out of the cage and shot straight into the darkness. Got you, the elf snickered as the darkness enveloping his lackeys faded away, revealing the Dark Lord and two other headless bodies. The golden chains coiled around Michael like sentient beings. They squeezed him, restricting his movements. The elf couldn't care less about the death of 3 of his lackeys. He forgot about everything when he saw the chains coiling around the Dark Lord. Layla's heart skipped a beat as she tried to ascend into the air. But Gaia simply stopped her and shook her head. Let the elf be happy for a moment, Gaia smirked. When the elf sensed the drop in his power radiation, he dashed at the Dark Lord to take advantage of the situation. On the midway, a trident made of emerald stone materialized in the elf's hands. He clenched the trident tight and stabbed Michael. But when the trident was a few inches away from his chest, the Dark Lord's figure disappeared from his sight. The elf felt a chill as his instincts screamed at him to turn around. As he was about to turn around, he felt a sharp pain in his back. He looked down to see a sword sticking through his gut. Blood trickles down from the tip of the black sword. He tried to move, yet his body refused. Jirage, the elf growled as he tried to push the sword back, only to feel a sharp sting in his neck. He slowly turned to the side and saw the Dark Lord injecting something into his neck. Layla witnessed the battle with awe and shock. This was the first time she had seen two immortals go head-to-head. And the effects of the battle were devastating to the land around them. When she looked around, the barren land had countless cracks, craters, and bodies. If they battled above a city or a town, it would have turned into a ruin by the end of their battle. Once the injection of paralyzing poison was empty, Michael drew the needle out of the elf's neck. "What did you do?" The elf could barely move his lips and questioned the Dark Lord. Michael grabbed the elf by his neck, descended from the sky, and landed beside Gaia and Layla. "It is not safe for you here," Michael told Layla. "I am not moving without any information about Harry," Layla shook her head. "And we will get it when we interrogate the elf." "We cannot do that here," Michael's voice turned grave. Layla clenched her fist, thinking about leaving the fire realm. Eventually, she agreed to leave the place and follow Michael. After Layla nodded, Michael willed the system to teleport them all to the castle, where they had everything to break down the elf. Layla closed her eyes when she felt the space around her distort, and by the time she opened her eyes, she was standing in a brightly lit hall with a large round stone table in the center. Seeing Gaia walking away with the elf, Layla tried to follow her behind. "You don't want to see it." "Trust me," Michael stopped Layla. "Give me 10 minutes with him, and I will be back with a lead on your son," Gaia reassured Layla before leaving the hall. Layla seemed reluctant but ultimately decided not to follow her behind. After Gaia left the room, she was alone with Ghost in the room. As one would expect, Layla's eyes were filled with concern and fear for her son's life. Poor Layla felt so helpless and weak to do anything. Her inner emotions slowly turned into anger. Michael noticed her eyes blazing with fury as he sat on his throne. Unlike Layla, Michael remained calm and didn't direct his anger toward her because he knew there was nothing Layla could have done.